Bonjour, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Reap the Spoils. I'm Mark Sullivan.
I'm Delaila Lugo.
And I'm Jason Kwasnicki.
And Jason, what game are we talking about today?
We are talking about Clair Obscur, Expedition 33. And it kind of, I don't know why it kind of came off as like a Nier Automata accent there. Although it kind of makes sense given the music. I kept thinking of Nier.
What do you mean a Nier Automata accent?
Kind of the faux like British nature of the voice. It's not British, but it's faux British. But it's like Android British. I don't know. The connection I was trying to draw is the music, because throughout the music of this game, I was reminded very much of Nier's soundtrack, and
we'll definitely we'll definitely dig into that because I agree. But Reap the Spoils is a semi-monthly spoiler cast where we will play a game and we'll come here and we'll talk about it, spoil the whole dang thing. It's not always a game. Sometimes it's a TV show or a movie based on games, but this time it's a video game. And that game is called Clair Obscur Expedition 33. So, if you have not played Clair Obscur Expedition 33, I highly recommend that you pause this episode, you go and pick up that video game. It's probably going to be easier for you to buy it digitally, though it has been... Physical copies have been trickling out more and more the past few weeks at the time of this recording. But that being said, if you haven't played that game, go buy and play that game and come listen to us spoil it and talk about it at length, at detail. I will also say maybe some spoilers also if you haven't played the video game Final Fantasy X. Maybe pause this and go play that game too. It's going to be, for me at least, it's going to be a hard thing to avoid talking about when we're talking about Clair Obscur Expedition 33. So, primarily Clair Obscur Expedition 33. Also, maybe go play Final Fantasy X, and then listen to this episode, because we're going to spoil definitely Expedition 33, a little bit of Final Fantasy X.
It's funny, as a fellow Final Fantasy fan, say that 4 times fast. That wasn't even the first place my mind went to other pop culture references, which I'm sure we'll get into, but I think I understand what you're saying, yeah.
It's...
yes, I understand, yeah.
We're going to get into it. Okay, are you guys ready for the info block?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I like this one.
Very interesting. And some pictures are coming out now. You can see some... But anyway, let Mark take it away.
Well, realistically, so for the info block for Clair Obscur Expedition 33, I mean, I'm going to mostly just give some really broad, names, but I really am going to just point the audience to the plugs that I'm going to put into the description of this episode, because SkillUp kind of did a lot of the work for everyone, realistically. He put out an excellent video recently, basically a documentary interviewing many members of the development team for Clair Obscur Expedition 33, kind of chronicling the founding of Sandfall Interactive and the kind of genesis of this game, so to speak, and that studio. Really, really excellent video. It's a feature-length documentary, basically, about the making of this game. It kind of was meant to be a review of this game and turned into so much more. So I'm going to put that in the description, but broadly, the director, and I'm going to butcher these names because they're all French and I can hardly say bonjour. So apologies for that. Director Guillaume Broche, he came up with the idea for this game in 2019 when he was still working at Ubisoft. Co-founders of Sandfall Interactive were him and who became the producer of this game, Francois Maurice. I'm not sure. Again, apologies for butchering the names. And he was the producer for the game. Tom Guillermin, who is the programmer or primary programmer. And they also went on to recruit Nicholas Maxon Franchomme for art direction, Jennifer Svedberg-Yen as the lead writer, who, fun fact, as you'll learn in that video, she initially auditioned for a voice acting role on a Reddit thread. The whole story about how everyone came together for this game is fascinating. And Lorien Testard for the music. He's the composer. So yeah, I'm gonna put that video in the description. I highly recommend everyone go check it out because I don't want to take any of the thunder away
Yeah,
from
and
someone like
it's
Scale Up who put a lot of
and
work and effort into that video.
I would highly recommend looking into it, especially if you're interested enough to be here and listen to this. It's very much like going back and reading or watching stories of how like your favorite old at the time were indie movies and now are kind of classics like Star Wars, Raiders, or even in the '90s like Tarantino, sorry's first few flicks, Robert Rodriguez, all those stories. It
Mhm.
very much plays out like those, and it's equally as interesting and an insight into the craft.
Yeah. And there'll also be a few other sources in the description that we'll get to. Per the conversation, I definitely want to steer toward later. But yeah, the game released on April 24th, 2025, came out on PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. The publisher of the game was Kepler Interactive. And some interesting things to call out there. I've never heard of Kepler Interactive. So definitely a smaller publisher and a brand new studio spun up about 6 years ago to develop this game. It kind of stemmed as like a small passion project and became a lot more. So
Very
uh
cool.
that's what I pretty much have for the info block. And yeah, final spoiler warning. If you haven't played Clair Obscur Expedition 33, or secondarily, if you haven't played Final Fantasy X, uh, I highly recommend
There's
pausing,
going to be a lot
going,
of
and playing these
pop
games.
culture spoilers. Some spoilers, some not. Some premises.
I mean, are there any big ones that you want to call out just up top so we can just give those
Like I could
warnings?
like I mean I could name the names, but I won't talk about them, but
I
like
mean,
I don't know.
We're going to
here,
be referencing like major twists from multiple, or we'll try to stay away because there are many a twists you could reference, especially from
realistically,
Final Fantasy.
yeah, but
Yeah,
realistically, Jason, you know why
I
I'm calling
know.
out 10.
Yeah, I know why you're referencing 10 in particular, but being that it's a French game heavily inspired by Golden Age JRPGs, um,
Yeah. Well,
Final
okay.
Fantasy, the
So
whole twist, quote unquote,
so
formula is very. You could point to a lot of them. I know why you're pointing to 10 though.
yeah, and just again, final spoiler warning. We're gonna get into it right now. Delilah, have you played Final Fantasy X?
I know the ending, and I know that's
Okay.
what you guys are referring to,
Okay.
but I
So
never played it myself.
yeah, I was gonna kind of say if you hadn't played it before, you kind of have now.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, this game, it's like I read an interview again. It's gonna be in the description. With RPG site that Francois Marie and Maurice, again, apologies if I'm butchering that name. He did with RPGsite.net about this game as the previews were coming out. This was before release, talking about this game's biggest influences. And I read that interview way after I had started the game. And yeah, I could have told you right away that the two biggest influences on this game, which he does call out in that interview, are Final Fantasy X and Persona 5.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy X for the narrative and Persona 5 obviously for the aesthetics, which we'll talk about later. But like, man, Final Fantasy X, what is this world if not just Xanarkand, basically?
Right.
Um it's like there's the parallel you could kind of draw for the first like half of the game with just the idea of there being this event that kind of wipes everyone out on a pretty consistent basis, like Sin killing or wrecking havoc until a summoner is able to defeat him and stop him for a period of time. Whereas in this game, it's a year goes by and a Gomage happens that wipes out everyone at a certain age. It's a whole nother thing to have uh an entire fictional world, or not even fictional, but like just non-existent world of people that are kept alive because of grief, and that really is just like that's the plot, right? It's
Yeah.
a very, very large parallel that can't really be ignored or avoided. And I wouldn't say that soured me on the experience here, but it definitely made me feel like it was, even though the setting is very unique, it's very original. The plot's bones don't really feel that way. And I guess, like, how did you guys kind of take that twist in particular, that this world is literally in a canvas, and is entirely, fake, artificial?
For me,
Delaila, sorry,
it was an unexpected twist because there were some other twists that happened that we'll talk about that I actually predicted. But this twist I didn't. And at first it made me feel like, well then what was the point of the gommage and what was the point of all of this, and does anything even matter? And I felt very nihilistic initially. But then when I sat with it and thought about it a little bit more and saw like what they were going for, I actually liked it, especially because some of the most important characters and some of the most important things that are happening in the real world, we only maybe get 10 minutes of time with. And I think
Yeah.
that in and of itself provides like a lot of room for conversation and speculation and theory, and just it kind of unpacking characters and their motives overall. And so I liked it, but I can also see the argument for people that feel like everything, like the weight of the gommage, which was such an impactful thing the first hour of the game, maybe doesn't feel as important or special or worth like speculating on anymore, because now we know why that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
But I love it personally.
Yeah, I adore it. Not just because from a storytelling perspective, it helps not simplify, clarify what the conflict is and make it very, very personal, and attach aspects of that conflict to each character. But also the way that the world is set up. Yes, it's a painting, and these are artists using some sort of, not really explained, but it doesn't need to be, fantasy, sci-fi, magic, whatever you will, to create these paintings and go into them. But it effectively makes the main cast, which really is the Desandre family. They're essentially a pantheon of Greek gods within this world, adding kind of another dimension to the story. And the story very much plays out like, if you've ever seen the old Clash of the Titans film, from the 60s, or is it 70s or 60s, can't quite remember. But basically, the sections of that movie where it's depicting the Greek gods, they're in a room with a bunch of action figures playing with the action figures, which are the real characters in the real world. And then when it transitions, those action figures will, become the actual, Perseus and the rest of the cast from that story. The point being here is that the Desandre family is essentially having out their own conflict that overarcs this entire story, and the world that you're in for most of it is really just a backdrop to that. And it's an interesting dynamic, and there's more to talk about with the way the world is formed via these characters and each perspective they bring to that central conflict. But I actually love it, and I love how it focuses it and gives it, in my opinion, more depth and meaning. Because I called pretty early that there was going to be a sort of never-ending story type scenario here, and to a degree, because never-ending story is also about a boy getting over the loss of his mother. Bit of a parallel there, but to a degree, I was more wrong about the who's and the whys and how everything would fit together. But when you go back, it's all there laid out, pretty well foreshadowed.
Yeah, there's a lot of breadcrumbs.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and you can put very early in the game, you meet Real Verso, the ghost, and you meet him again and again. And from very early on, they're talking about the fire. So the pieces are all there, and I didn't put it together exactly how it would go, but as right before the reveal, it all fit together as it should, and it works perfectly fine. And I absolutely adore the way it all comes together.
And on that note, I think the world building in general is very, very good. Like, everything is contextualized extremely well, right? Like, even down to like the Nevrons and why they exist. They were a creation of Clair to assist Renoir, right, by gathering Lumina,
Yes,
or Chroma.
They prevent the Chroma from going back to Aileen,
so
and they
that
collect
she
them.
can
Yeah,
weaken. Yeah,
yeah.
So like she's essentially trying to help Renoir. Like the fact that that's contextualized. The gestrals are largely just like
And
creation.
it's also contextualized with character, because when you see where they're created by the in-universe in painting version of Clea, you see what Clea has done to herself, what she thinks she herself is deserving of. It speaks of the character. The world building speaks of the character to the reflective, and this is reflected in the axons, who each are meant to represent distillations of the characters. You see Clea's character,
Hmm.
her axon, being essentially a titan from Greek mythology with all this shit on her back carrying it. Very representative of the character itself. We'll go through each character, but the world building doesn't just build on the plot, it builds on the characters themselves, because the characters, all of them, all of the Desandre family are reflected in the world.
They all
And
created part of it.
Yeah.
And this is like the kind of game where if you kind of want to play it a second time, although I'm not going to because there's a lot of games, but I wouldn't mind playing it a second time just to see all the breadcrumbs, just to like really digest how they laid that stuff out and analyze it a lot more because it has that much depth to it.
And it's not all
Yeah.
shoved in your face. A lot of it is actually, you have to kind of go into the quote unquote post game, side game, whatever you want to consider it, and find a lot of it. Although it's also not necessary to understand fully what's going on, which is what I think is a really beautiful part of that about it. Is you don't need it, but it's there and it's awesome. But the story still works beautifully even without it. It just, you can flesh it out as much as you want.
Yeah, we'll dig a little more into that stuff later, but um yeah, so back to the world building, with it. I didn't even realize that the gestrals are meant to like represent paintbrushes.
Yep.
That's kind of what they look like. I didn't realize that until my wife pointed it out. Like, oh, they kind of look like paintbrushes. I guess that's why, because they're all painters. And I'm like, oh
Well,
my
they're
god.
also they're
Trees.
like Monoko and Noko are the family, cat and dog, or just two dogs or
I
two
think two
cats.
doesn't. Yeah,
It
they're
doesn't make it explicit, but they're family pets. Yeah.
yeah.
So
You
there's a
you
bit of that
find
as well.
you find that out like if you when like during the interlude where you're Alicia in the manor, right, in
Right.
between Act 2 and 3. Yeah. Um. So yeah, like stuff like that. Like the game is definitely well crafted. Everything, all the puzzle pieces fit perfectly into place. I definitely don't disagree with like any of that. It's mostly just like I feel like this game definitely does wear its influences on its sleeves, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just it definitely diminished the impact a little bit for me because I could see where it was coming from pretty clearly.
It's
And
funny you say that though, because I played through the entire game, beat it, and platted it before either of
yeah.
you, and I never once thought of Final Fantasy X. I was
Oh,
thinking of Never-Ending Story the entire time.
hey, but
And
there's multiple things you could
yeah, no, no,
realistically
no. There is.
connect,
I'm
right?
not
But
saying that's a bad thing. What I'm saying is it
yeah,
speaks, I think, to the quality of, yes, it wears its influences on its sleeves, but at the same time, it's taking them and doing its own thing with it.
yeah, no, for sure, for sure. I'm not trying to say that this game is like completely derivative of. I was being pretty facetious when I said, "Oh, if you haven't played Final Fantasy X before, you kind of
No,
have
I know,
now."
I know.
It's like there's some truth to that statement, but it's also a very different thing. I totally acknowledge that. Um, but it's still it's just that it didn't hit me quite as hard as like it was hitting you. Like throughout the time of me playing this game and you had already finished it, I was like, yeah, this isn't really blowing my mind or anything. And that's kind of why, right? And there were definitely twists that I didn't see coming. Like obviously I wasn't really expecting I wasn't expecting the Xanarkin connection, right? I wasn't ready for the canvas to be an artificial world created through grief. But it's also like when it happened, I was like, oh wow, this is more like Final Fantasy X than I realized, and that it was a different kind of revelation where it didn't blow my mind, but it was also like, oh, that's really interesting. That kind of thing, Um
It wasn't just a canvas created by grief. Like this was a canvas created
y-
from just
Yeah,
fun kids,
well,
grief is what keeps it
yeah.
alive.
Not
what
yeah,
grief is
sorry.
what keeps it alive.
Yeah,
If I said created by grief, that's yeah, that's you. The situation, the plot,
yeah.
Yeah.
the motive that's driving everyone
The
forward, it
core
was created through
conflict,
grief.
is one, two, three, four characters dealing with grief and how each one approaches it from a different perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
Really, all five characters.
No, that's
Mhm.
true. Yeah, 'cause
Yeah.
well, dealing with life less than grief. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
but we'll get into it. Yeah. But that's what I mean when I say it very much is evocative of me of Greek mythology and how gods are playing, the world. Even all of the rest of the cast are essentially reflections of each of the members of the Desandre family, and we'll get into it when we get into each member. But
Well, I actually kind of want to talk a little bit because he was so short-lived, literally and figuratively. I kind of want to open talking to, or I kind of want to talk about Gustav a little bit because um he is introduced as this fairly likable and it was introduced seemingly as the main character.
with a very notable voice actor playing him, yeah.
Which is probably I wouldn't say probably why, but maybe in due part as to why he dies so early
Yeah.
on.
He had to go
Maybe
film Daredevil.
they didn't have that Charlie Cox money.
Yeah.
They could get Andy Serkis to occasionally pop in and be the villain, but like Charlie Cox is a main character. We gotta kill him off at the end of the first act. We don't have that kind of budget. But but Gustav, no, he's a really likable guy. We're introduced to him like saying goodbye to a woman he loves on her Gomage Day and on the eve of his expedition 33. I guess I what did you guys think about his death? Was it like surprising? Did you expect him to come back at any point? Like
Mm. Yeah, it was. I didn't expect him to die. I literally thought he was the main character because he's the one that you pretty much like start with when you're in the camp. That's who you interact with the other characters with. And when he died so quickly, and then all of a sudden Verso just pops out of nowhere, I was a little like, oh, there's some like parallel universe stuff happening here, isn't there? Because him, Verso, and Renoir looked very, very similar. And
That's
now that we,
the first thing that popped into my head in that opening sequence was how my initial thought was that Renoir was an older version of Gustave.
mine too.
That was my first thought. Yeah.
yeah, so I was like, okay, so there's something going on here. So it didn't really fully sit to me that he was like dead. Now, when they started like grieving him by the red tree, I definitely cried. I was like, oh man, like just grief in general. Like you reflect on your own personal losses in real life, like us IRL. And so it was very like impactful at that point. But when it first happened, I was like, nah, he's gonna come back. He's Renoir, he's Verso, he's an alternate version of something. But then when, now knowing the truth, it's like it makes sense that he would look like them because he's meant to be the father and brotherly role. So maybe, of course he would be painted in that way to kind of serve that for Mael. So, there was something there, but yeah, it was very surprising and really impactful and like a crazy way to end the act. I think the way they ended every single act was just like mind-blowing after mind-blowing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's also super clever because, as you just insinuated, and there's nothing explicitly saying this, and it's another one of those areas that's left ambiguous for speculation for years to come as people play. But it seems very clear that Mael subconsciously painted a lot of these. I'll just call them fake characters in the image, in parallel to real Desandre members, and like you just said, Delaila, Gustave is very much meant to embody a lot of what she saw from Verso. And it's actually when you go back and think about Gustave's arc from beginning to end, how closely a lot of his big beats, including his death, parallel what Verso has done and will go on to do. Because keep in mind, Verso has been in the shadows protecting Mael this entire time up until this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's really clever and also a nice way of foreshadowing and giving hints into the mindset of a character that's going to become very enigmatic in the form of Verso. Because we do very early on get those insights, that hopelessness once they land to get ambushed and destroyed, and Gustave almost takes his own life. Very pertinent to what we're going to get out of Verso later on. And him sacrificing himself to save Mael is not all dissimilar of Versos, if you want to phrase it that way, sacrificing himself towards the end to again save Mael / Alicia.
Well, and
So-
and the what we can, I think, safely dub the good ending, which
Right.
we'll get to shortly.
Yeah.
I think. But yeah, no, I didn't even think about the idea that Gustav kind of does resemble. I mean,
They
I
all
agree
do
with you
because
guys.
Lune is Claire, Ciel is Eileen. To some extent, Monoko is, and we can get into it more when we talk about like the axons and each of those characters individually. But there is an argument to be, I've seen it made, and I tend to agree with it, that there's implied to be some subconscious painting going on of Mael in shaping the cast to essentially reflect her own family.
That's interesting. I didn't see or put that together or anything. I don't know about
Oh.
Lune. Like, she's pretty clearly
Lune is very much Claire. As somebody who is like deep about Claire, like I wanted to know everything about Claire.
deep about.
Because she's so. Because if you just play the game normally without engaging any side content,
Yeah,
there's not much about her, and yet she is
And-
so crucial to the story.
and that is kind of part of my problem with the extended cast. If we want to talk a little bit about the other characters.
Oh, see, I love it about her. We'll get into it.
I think, well, we could talk about it now. We could just talk about the characters a little broadly before we navigate our way toward the two possible endings of this game. But I think CL and Lune, for the most part, are inconsequential characters. They don't offer a ton to the actual plot other than being there to be supporting characters, and they do have their own backstory. They are introduced their own backstory mostly through the character relationship system, which feels really just thrown in to have more Persona influence in this game. But otherwise they could have been replaced with any other party members, and the plot could have gone on the same way, outside of this these potential parallels you're drawing to the other Dysandra family members, which I guess would come in their backstories, which again, that's stuff that you don't have to engage with.
They have very slight moments, like Lune bringing Gustav back from the depths. He's about to kill himself, and Lune is the one who says no, and it's because no, our mission is this, which is a very clear thing to do.
Well, and
we got to do this.
Okay, that's a fine parallel to draw. It's but it overall in the main plot, it just doesn't seem like those two characters. Like, they could have been any other character, and it would have the plot would have gone on the same way.
When we say main plot, are we including the big side quests for each character that come up in the last act? No, okay.
They're totally, you don't have to do those. Those are side content. It helps to actually make those characters into characters.
Yeah, I just felt because they do actually make a big deal. Unlike any other side content, they do actually mark that stuff on the map. In a special way. So I understand. Yeah, I understand your perspective on that, but I would almost feel like it needs to be included. But yeah, I get your point.
It's like, if that stuff was required, if you had to go and do those, or if they were even more fleshed out, like say the Mass Effect 2 structure, where you kind of have to, the plot of the game is doing those character quests, is going and building those relationships for toward the final mission, but these things are totally optional. You could beat the game and never do them, and Lune and CL's backstories are totally left obscured.
Yeah,
no pun intended.
It's very clear, and this is not an excuse, but explanation that I've heard and I came up to myself, and I agree with, that they very clearly in the third act did not have time or resources, or both, to fully structure it, which is why you in the third act, in the beginning, you get that montage of them collecting all the chroma from all the different spots, and it's just like, okay, if you want to, you can go to the end, to the final boss, or you can go do all these big story beats, which I have a feeling they wanted to structure but just didn't have time or resources.
Yeah, But at the same time, like you called out earlier, like this game very much paying homage and being heavily influenced by like a lot of classic JRPGs. And like you think back to like Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9, all of which had multiple discs on PS1.
Oh no,
That
for sure.
that
I'm
final
not saying
disc is just the
yeah.
final dungeon and all the end game content. You
No,
know?
no, no. For sure, they made it work. I'm not saying that
Yeah.
there wasn't supposed to be a big final end game. I'm
Yeah.
saying I'm sure a lot of that was supposed to be more structured. The story, as far as big story beats that go.
Yeah, I just that's just going back on track. Like Lune, like again, she does get a little fleshed out. Her whole backstory has to do with like her parents dying on their expedition, her wanting to find out kind of what happened to them. Her story is less interesting to me than even CL's. CL's has to do with like she actually has this budding relationship with Verso
So that
and
wasn't optional. I wasn't sure if that was like because I I got into a relationship with CL as
Yeah.
Verso,
So did I.
but I was like, did you have the option for Lune?
Yes.
I don't think
Okay.
so.
Yeah,
Because
you
at
can
the
romance
end,
Lune.
there's a
I'm pretty sure.
conversation, and she kind of says, "Oh, like it would have been nice. I see you
Yeah,
and CL been
this
hanging out, but it would have been nice." But I don't know
the
if that was like,
song,
Oh,
that whole song sequence with Lune I'm pretty sure is supposed to be kind of the matriculation of their romance.
interesting.
So
yeah,
like, yeah, you get like a point of no return, and I ended up
and
feeling once the whole we can bring them all back comes into play, I felt like a home wrecker with CL. I was like, no, why didn't I choose Lune? Especially once I put it together that Lune was like the recreation of Clair, and I love Clair so much. She's like one of my favorite characters here.
so like okay, real quick with the Lune, the romance situation. So I don't know if it plays out purposely where you romance CL, but then there's like something budding with Lune as well, but it's not as explicit as like them having sex
Well,
as with CL.
yeah.
Because SKA does say that Verso, his heart beats fast around both of them, and so there's like there's a lot there, but I don't know if it's scripted or if there's an option.
I doubt it's.
Well,
I didn't do it and I didn't watch it. I doubt it's as explicit, just given the character differences.
And I guess it just has to do with like what dialogue options. It felt pretty organic to me, like them Verso and CL kind of
Yeah,
becoming
considering CL's background, yeah.
well, it just didn't even seem to me like the dialogue options could lead me in multiple directions. It kind of just seemed like it was he was going to have a subplot of romancing CL and a subplot of just being really cool buds with Lune.
Yeah.
No, you basically just the ones with Lune, the quote unquote romance ones, are less like explicit, just because the character differences.
Hey, you want to go bang under the moonlight? Yeah,
I'm pretty
let's
sure.
do it.
I'm pretty sure it still ends with her, playing the song. It's just a little more romantically suggestive.
Gotcha. Oh, so that there's no option. It's just that Verso painted this world, so of course he would paint himself to romance both of them in some kind of way, right?
There are like 2 threshold choices. So if you've already done both for CL, you can't romance Lune at that point. I'm pretty sure. I don't know.
Okay,
I didn't
I'd be
really
curious
play.
to know
I didn't really play or look up, but I know
This
that
is
you
like,
can romance both.
The
Yeah.
fact that there's even romance options is like I just thought if you progress CL storyline they would become romantically involved, and if you progress Lune's they would just be like very curious about each other, not sexually or anything, just like, hey, what's like tell me about all this wild shit, whatever they talked about. I don't even remember.
She just wanted him for information.
And
then they bonded over music.
Yeah, she's
like,
always
you're an immortal living textbook. Tell me everything.
Yeah, she's always in her work, which is, who does that remind you of?
All
of the
right,
Sandra
calm
family.
down. Jesus Christ.
No, I'm just trying to.
Jason would take Clair into his fantasy world.
Oh hell yeah!
Wow. Okay.
Her Axon is literally a giant titan carrying the world on her shoulders, stepping on people.
Oh.
Okay. Now we know what kind of kinks Jason's into. Okay, but you guys see what I'm talking about, though, is like, so a lot of what we just talked about is totally optional, and like you don't have to talk to your characters at your camp, you don't have to progress those relationships. for the most part, CL and Luna are just there to be there, have their respective party member quirks in combat, and they don't offer a ton of unique flavor to the plot other than getting really pissed off at Verso when they find out Renoir's your father and you didn't tell us that. God damn, bro, why didn't you say that?
Here's why I can forgive that, is precisely because of that, because the whole point is that they're not real.
Yeah, I wonder if it was done.
And on top of that, I will put in, and some of the greatest, I think we would agree, some of the greatest games of all time have the same exact thing. Final Fantasy 3/6.
Oh, okay. 6.
So again, there's that delineation of game and full narrative storytelling. And
Yeah,
I don't think that's an excuse here. I think it literally is just what I said before. They ran out of time and resources to put it all together fully. But
I mean,
I also, at the end of the day, I'm not bothered much because those characters aren't real. They're not central to the conflict.
I mean, just to play devil's advocate to the point you just made, though, there is a big difference between Final Fantasy VI and Expedition 33. Expedition 33 has 6 total party members. Final Fantasy VI has 14. It's they're spread a little thin in that game, and yeah, that's definitely a criticism I would lob at it.
But here's one level of the meta commentary of this game. Are those your party members, or is the Desandre family one big party that's fighting with each other over the course of this space? And those quote unquote party members are Mael's moves, attacks, spells in effect.
Sure,
if you understand what I'm saying, and that's just one level of meta. Yeah.
So I mean, I agree with you on that note, but you only really find that out by Act 3. That's hours upon hours of this game where you have 2 party members that just come off as like really bland for the most part and offer not much and not very many unique things to the party until they do, or they can optionally, that's kind of what I'm getting at. That's kind of what my issue
I'd say
with
that in dialogue they're well painted. Again, Luna is very well structured. Luna is very well structured. CL in every bit of dialogue is the matriarchal figure to the group and to Mael. Again, because they're supposed to be reflections of the family itself.
I get what you're going for. It's just,
so I wouldn't say they add nothing or are bland. I also can understand the critique.
Okay.
I wonder if that was done purposely, because you can either passively play the game and get to the point and realize the point and not care. But I think to get the most out of the game and to really struggle with your final ending is to build those connections with the characters and do that optional stuff. And I wonder if it would be more effective if it wasn't optional, but maybe like when people reach the end, maybe they wanted it to be optional because they just can't stand that these characters that they had to talk to and get to know and get connected to were really fake,
Yeah,
like the more you get to know them, the harder it is to say goodbye, kind of thing.
Right.
You're also leaving out other party members, including Verso, but also Minoko and Eskie. I guess Eskie is not really a party member, but they all know what's going on from the get-go. And they're keeping their mouth shut for a reason. But they also have personalities of their own as well.
I don't bring up Verso because he's essentially your POV character. The relations you're building are between
is
Verso.
He though?
Well, in the context of the context of the relationship system, yes. Because all the relationships you're building are the characters' relationships with Verso. Even though I know what you're trying to say, that you're trying to imply Mael is really the POV character, and
right.
For she definitely does by the end. She definitely is the ostensibly the main character of the game. She is like the driving force for the party, the driving force for the mission, just in front of Verso, because Verso is the whole reason we're in this fucking mess. But from the perspective of how those relationships are built, those relationships are built between the character and Verso. So that's what I'm kind of referring to there. With regards to Minoko and Eskie, I don't lobby the criticism at those two, because those two do have very distinct characteristics, personalities, and backstories established pretty quickly, and that isn't the case with Lune and CL. They eventually do. It just takes time, and it is mostly optional.
I mean,
So
I did struggle with the structure mostly when it came to the end game content because it doesn't really like guide you there in the way that the character missions do with the icon. And I didn't like going back and doing that stuff after beating the game, but you kind of had to when it came to like level scaling and also, yeah, you kind of had to when it came to level scaling, but when it came to like story, it's not that it didn't flow as well. I just would have preferred to do that stuff before the final act because then I feel like I would have had a lot more context. So that's the only criticism I have with the structure. But the optional stuff, man, I feel like if you don't do it, like I personally love CL Lune. I love every single character in this game. The Desandre family, the painted characters, everything. And having that dialogue just made everything that much more impactful, even though it was optional.
I want to be clear, just before someone's typing up a comment about me being a curmudgeon. Like I did like these characters. I just think that Lune and CL should have been more fleshed out sooner and not mostly through end game side content. That's really just like my issue with those two characters in particular. I overall did like them.
You're talking more just like background information rather than necessarily characterization through dialogue.
Right. Like I said, you could have swapped Lune with anyone else with the same exact personality and same exact dialogue, and it wouldn't have mattered. It's when
Like
she
Cleo?
eventually
I just did that on purpose just to annoy you.
God, I gotta start talking about CL instead, just to get you to put your wiener down.
Like Aileen?
Christ. But that's the only reason I bring that up. I did like all the characters. I overall, like by the end, after doing all the side content, they were all, or not even by that point, like sooner than that. It just took time for those two in particular to really develop their own character, so to speak. With regards to your comment about the side content at the end of the game, Delaila, I would overall agree with you. The only problem is it's really easy to get overpowered in this game.
Yeah, which is my criticism.
Yeah, and that like, Jason and I had conflicting recommendations when you were reaching through Act 3, and just to, I guess, talk about that for the audience, like, Jason, you grinded everything, did everything before beating the game, made it to level 99.
I wasn't even trying in any organized, and I've seen this complaint a lot about a lack of marks and a lack of direction. And I understand I'm in the minority here, but I completely disagree. I love that it gives you that. I'm tired of seeing fucking maps of shit in my video game.
Yeah,
I miss the 90s just having a map and which is what I did with this game for dozens of hours, just exploring a map. It's something I haven't felt since I was a child, and it's one of the reasons I probably loved this game and beat it and plat it as fast as I did before either of you guys, which is the first.
And this is only Jason's second plat, and this
I put in 70 or 88 hours.
About.
Yeah. The other one was Fallout 4, which I save scummed and
you fucking hated that experience.
Yeah. But no, I genuinely enjoy just not having that direction, and even when I was very clearly overpowered for something, I felt rewarded for the build, and we'll get into that when we talk about gameplay, but the different progression systems in the build crafting and also the skill involved in the combat. So I wasn't worried about being overpowered, and there are commensurate fights in the end game to match even the highest power levels.
Well, just to bring it back to why I brought this point up, because I had the opposite recommendation of just go beat the game and then do everything after, because I didn't want to go into the final dungeon and trivialize it. I wanted the final dungeon to feel somewhat challenging. I didn't want to be so overpowered that I was skipping final boss mechanics. Like, I wanted to see that fight for what it was before I was too powerful to see that stuff. And there's like ways around that, right? Like you can turn
and the game does give you
Lumina off.
Yeah, and the game does give you vague warnings, not very specific, of what's over and what's under. Not what's under.
Yeah,
I wish they did give a bit of a better power level warning,
like a green, yellow, red system, even like not just danger or no danger,
which isn't even useful because I was getting through danger zones pretty much earlier in some
See,
cases, depending on the.
It made ordering and figuring out what to do in Endgame for me kind of a fucking nightmare without
Which
finding
again, I
a
love the
Reddit
mystery,
guide.
but I can understand why a lot of people wish for more quality of life when it comes to that.
I mean, I just like I said, a green, yellow, red system that would tell me like, oh, you're at the appropriate level for this system or this dungeon, or oh, you might struggle a little bit, or don't fucking do this right now. Instead, it went for a binary system, and that kind of just was like, I have no idea what to prioritize. I have no idea what I can handle, and I don't really feel like banging my head against a wall trying to do a dungeon that I'm not ready for without knowing before going in, you know?
To be clear, my criticism wasn't that I wanted like map markers, although I would have like the option to put my own for like bosses that I wanted to go back to or
I agree
areas
with
that
that for sure.
like the
Yeah.
Elden Ring or Breath of the Wild kind of system.
Yeah.
My thing is for those core story things like the Simon fight and the Clay fight, like those two, I feel like were so it added so much to the story that it would have been nice for that to have been something that I could have done before the final fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the lore. It's not necessary. Most of the Clay stuff isn't necessary for the main campaign. You only really need to know the bare essentials. But both of those two, they want it both ways. They wanted to have two like end game boss fights, but both of them do give you a lot of lore stuff regarding Clea. And there's also an entire area, the tower. What's it called?
Endless
Oh, the
Tower.
Endless
Yeah.
Tower, I
The
didn't
endless
really like
tower.
that.
That's all. But the ending, when you do get to the top of it, is kind of important in fleshing out. It's very small, but Clea does show a tiny sliver of a sisterly love that she very
Mhm.
much does have buried underneath all of her, business exterior.
Yeah, so I guess we can like pivot back and like talk a little bit
The
more about
characters, yeah,
Clea. Well, like specifically Clea and like what she's kind of doing behind the scenes, because she's not as present a character as like a lot of other members of the Dysandra family, but she is probably the one that is uh
facilitating the most.
facilitating yeah, right, because like we talked about before with the world building, like she created the Nevrons to gather chroma and weaken Aline. She's trying to prevent, or she's trying to help Renoir, her father, in getting
Yeah,
Aline out of the canvas
by gathering
so
all the
that,
chroma, yeah.
right. And
She also facilitates Alicia going in, and tries to help her not, but also at the same time protect. There's a lot of stuff going on.
yeah, well, there's the whole thing that happens with Mael, or not Mael, Alicia. Alicia goes into the canvas to help Clea, and what exactly is the plot device or plot thing that happens? She just gets overwhelmed by the power that she winds up
Yeah, she's not
being
practiced enough,
reincarnated.
and
Yeah,
she gets subsumed by Aileen's chroma and is turned into a creation that's faux Aileen's creation, but also is of her own subconscious. So it's essentially
yeah.
just her reimagined herself.
And it makes
Um,
sense because she's two things. She's the youngest of the family, and she's kind of the weakest of
mhm,
them from the fire. She
yeah,
is permanently scarred and burned, which was definitely a cool revelation, realizing why so many of her Mael's attacks have to do with fire, and why she's kind of almost empowered by fire in combat. It's kind of interesting to realize that after you find out the
yeah.
truth behind her
Mhm.
character.
It also makes sense that she'd become subsumed by Aileen's chroma, given that in the end, in the final conflict, when it comes to like the three main approaches to grief that we get shown by the characters, she ends up kind of siding with Aileen. Um, but we'll
Mhm.
get to that, I expect. But yeah, yeah. So she gets subsumed, and that's where people get the theory that all the party members are essentially subconscious creations of Mael slash Alicia
That's
through
interesting.
Aileen's chroma.
Did you guys
Um,
predict that she was a paintress? throughout, like
Aileen?
earlier on before. No. Mael.
Oh, it's very clear early on that she's important, central to
Well,
the
yeah,
kind of
because
like
there's this shadowy
very early
girl
on.
with a scar on her face that looks exactly like her. It's like,
Exactly like
No, no,
her.
no. Even before that, when you find her and she's in this mysterious like crossroads multiverse mansion that you keep coming back to, she gets protected and she
oh,
obviously is
you're
seeing
talking
all these
about
visions.
after the landing and you're
When
separated
yeah,
and you find her in the
when you
manor.
first find her, it's clear that
Yeah.
and this
Well,
weird Grim Reaper dude is looking after her.
well,
Um,
and on that note, I think what was definitely a surprise is that the curator, the one that was protecting her, was real Renoir.
right.
Yeah, I
Or
would have never guessed
yes.
that because painted Renoir is more buff. I guess that's what Aline
Yeah,
wanted him to
and
be.
and you know that's another thing that gets a little hokey for me is the fact that there's the presence of a real character like real Renoir, and there's painted Renoir, and they seem to somewhat be at odds.
Well,
Like I
because it's Aileen's, or it gets tricky because Clea fucks with her own painting of herself, but
Mhm.
They're all essentially what Aileen sees of these individuals. So like Renoir is basically the same, but he comes off as way more evil when it's Aileen's painting versus his own, even though he has
Well,
essentially the same motivation.
well, that's the thing, right? Is the difference or the contrast in motivation, where Renoir as the curator, he wants to force Aileen out. Painted Renoir almost seems to want to keep the party away from her,
Right.
and that those two things are at odds if you consider them the same person. It just took me a while to realize that okay,
Yeah,
the real character and the painted character are not the same, and they don't necessarily have the same motivations, the same goals. And for Renoir, I feel like that's especially confusing because you wouldn't think that Renoir would want to keep the party from stopping Aileen, the paintress, because
I,
that's kind of his
and
goal.
I think that's why they make it that one above all. They make sure to have dialogue in there to clarify that for the audience.
Hmm.
yeah.
Um, because obviously all the other ones kind of are, with the exception of Clea, which you find in Fight, which has been tampered with by the real Clea, who essentially, very characteristically turns herself into a machine to just generate neurons in the what is it, something mansion, whatever tower, in the sky. But
The
but
Flying Manor.
the flying manor, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and you can actually find. I don't know if you guys realize this, but in the battlefield, you can actually find Clea's ghost, the real Clea, and she
Mm.
won't talk to you unless you've switched it to Mael, and she'll ask you if you've
Oh.
woken up yet.
I
Interesting. I didn't miss that.
probably
That's the only time you'll see her ghost throughout the game. On like, it's basically like the little Verso ghost, but it's a Clea
Right.
ghost.
I
Hmm.
She's
probably
in that
did do that.
battlefield early on.
I probably did do that and had no context for it, so I just promptly
Yeah,
forgot about it.
it's just another little fun fact breadcrumb that they made sure to put in there, so it all feels like it's making sense. Because
Yeah.
basically, time is passing differently. So Clea is like, "Hey, have you woken up yet? I guess not. Oh, come on, you're wasting time. We got shit to
Hmm.
do."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
it
mean, the
makes
only
sense
reason
and fits into place later on.
the only reason I predicted early on that Mael was a painter is because in one of her nightmares, she very clearly is in the center and is gommaging. And I
Right.
was like, wow, that are they really revealing this like this early? And then when it was confirmed, I was like, okay, cool. But the like I said, the other revelations, like
It's all
of
there very
dying.
early. Yeah, you hear
Yeah.
about the fire very early. Like the first time you meet one of the ghosts, they talk about a
Mhm.
fire. Like all the pieces
Yeah.
are there super early. It's just putting it together. It doesn't
Yeah.
fully click into place until it does,
like
which
you
is great.
like you said, they're breadcrumbs. They're breadcrumbs, and you kind of don't have context for them. But once you have the greater picture, you can kind of go back and see like, oh yeah, wow, they really did hint toward this like this early, and this was a pretty big hint, and I just didn't know anything about it, so I didn't think anything of it.
Yeah.
There's definitely a ton of those littered throughout this game, and I wouldn't really recall any of them unless I went back and replayed personally, at least. Um, I guess let's get into toward the ending of the game or endings, as it were. Um, with following, the conclusion of Act 2 and learning kind of the truth about everything, Mael regains her memories as Alicia, being sent back into the canvas and kind of recreates the party so that they can go and stop painted Renoir, right? It's to stop painted Renoir, not
No.
real Renoir. Real
No, you're
Renoir?
stopped.
You
The
killed
final
painted
Renoir
Renoir at the end of Act 2.
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
real
right.
Renoir. So the what is he called? The ghost guy.
Curator.
The curator turns into real Renoir because that's what he
Yeah.
was.
Right. Okay. And
Now that
following
Aileen is out, yeah.
Yeah, following that fight, it's all to gain control of the canvas, and that leads you to a choice.
And destroy the last
Verso
sliver of Verso's soul, yeah.
Verso wants to send Alicia home to move on. We didn't really talk about the fire much, so let's talk about a bit about the fire and why all this is happening. We didn't really talk about why they're grieving. Verso's dead. The real Verso
Real
is
Verso.
gone. He died in a fire. Alicia was horribly scarred, and
Verso
Aileen can't.
sacrificed himself to save Alicia.
True.
Mhm.
Yes.
Which
and,
is important when you consider the representations within the painting.
and not only that, but like it also is important to note based on like how the family takes that, right?
Yeah.
Everyone loved Verso, and that's not to say nobody loved Alicia, but Verso was like he was the star child.
Yeah.
For him to die and for him to not only die but to give his life to save Alicia's, it really rattled that family. And
Especially when you consider, on top of that, just to add, is that it's straight up said. I mean, Claire blames her, and to what degree you can blame Alicia is obviously debatable, but
right, 'cause we
apparently,
don't really know the full context of everything,
which I like, but we'll get into it. The fire was not just an accident. It's implied to have been caused by the quote unquote writers, which you can take from what you will, who are apparently in conflict with the painters. And it is implied that Alicia's foolishness, quote unquote, allowed them in and
But yeah,
caused the fire.
she was more of a writer than a painter herself. So I imagine.
Yeah, it says some of that in some of the additional material. Yeah, in the
So I
same
imagine
way
that
that
there was
Verso was
some.
kind of more of a musician than a painter.
Mhm. So I imagine there
Yeah.
was some, like, she wanted to maybe get to know or whatever. And this is all speculation, obviously, which I like the speculation. And because she like kind of sided with them, it caused this, fire. However it was caused, but it was from the conflict. And then Clea is on an expedition basically in the real world, to fight the fight alone, seemingly.
Well, because
Or at
Aileen
least
is supposed to be in charge of the painters, but now she's gone into her own painting. So Clea kind of takes up the mantle and very characteristically takes up everything, the world on her shoulders, the whole fight. Yeah, which is supposedly why you don't see her really at all throughout the story.
Yeah, and even if like Mael didn't like made a mistake that led to such a tragic thing, and uh that's why there's some resentment there. It is easy, like when you go through the anger. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little social worky here, but when you go through
No,
the
I was hoping you would get to this. I was hoping you'd get to this because that's what makes this story so great. Is that each of the Dre family members are a reflection of different
stages of grief.
manners of dealing with, but also stages of working through grief. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, being in that anger phase, it's easy to like kind of put blame, and it's not that she doesn't love Miles. She says it like, I'm also glad that he saved you, but also like I'm upset about it. I just a little personal story. When I had two cats, and when I lost my first cat, I was like angry at my first cat for being alive and not, and I wanted my other cat alive, but it was just like this weird like anger stage that you go through where you're just like trying to like blame something or make sense of something, and it really it doesn't make sense when you come to clear your head a little bit. But I feel like Clay is very much so there, and that's why she comes across as a little bit of a bitch towards Mael when you first meet her, like a little bit insensitive. But then when you really like think about her goal and what she's going through, and kind of like you said, shouldering all this stuff it makes sense. I feel like every character and their reaction to everything that's happening all is understandable.
Right. Which makes it super interesting because, like, is there a villain? Yeah,
No, I don't think
exactly.
so.
It's such an interesting conversation. Like, there's a YouTube channel, the shout I can't remember it off the name, but he does like deconstructions of villains, and he recently did a series of videos, which he doesn't normally do on this game, deconstructing quote unquote the villains of the game, which is each member of the Desandre family. I think he's still going. I think he's going to do a Mael video. But yeah, each member, like Clea is just straight up denial. She deals with the grief by denying it and avoiding it, and has that characteristic angry flair. Renoir tries to force everybody to move through their grief without realizing, because he's right. He's absolutely right, except that he's trying to force them to go through the stages before their time. Yeah, and Aileen, of course, is getting lost, and that's in grief. Whereas Verso uses lies to deflect the grief, and that's all represented in our axons. He who uses lies to hide the truth, she who dances in wonder, she who shoulders the world. It's all different, mythological representations of this very human, very basic thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
It's pretty cool stuff.
This is a lot of stuff I didn't think about or read about or anything. So I'm enjoying this. This is cool. This is interesting stuff.
This is why when you say Final Fantasy X, I didn't think I never. I'm sorry, it's just way more complex.
I mean, well, no, it's okay. Like, back up.
No. There's no backing up. I love Final Fantasy just as much as you do. Say,
I mean, I'm
this
not
better than most Final Fantasy writing.
No. Because okay. That sure, you could try to make that argument, or you could have that opinion or whatever. I'm not necessarily saying one is better than the other. I only bring up Final Fantasy X because there are very big, clear parallels that they drew from. It's like that.
I understand
I'm not saying that one is inferior or superior to the other. It's very clear how this game was influenced, and we'll talk more about the influences later because there's more
for sure, for sure. And I also didn't read that material that you're talking about, so it's so yeah.
I know sent it to you weeks ago.
I know you did.
Didn't either. I was trying to avoid I didn't want to watch any theory videos or anything before talking to you guys, because I like to my perspective changes a little bit as I talk to you guys, and it changes more as I hear other people.
And that's fair. I mostly I found that RPG site article because I was like, all right, you know what? I need to see if they've ever talked about their influences. And then I found that interview pretty quickly and was like, okay, so all the things that I thought influenced this game, I was 100% dead on about. Like every single one. The only one that I didn't pick up on because I haven't played it is Sekiro, and we'll talk about that later because that entirely has to do with combat.
Yeah, that's all gameplay.
Yeah, but like that's the only reason I came across that interview was because I like within the first few hours was like, man, this basically just feels like Final Fantasy X with a little bit of Persona 5, and bingo. Those are two of the biggest influences of this game. Which again is not a bad thing. It's not I'm not saying one is superior or inferior to the other. I just saw it very, very quickly, and there's a reason I did, and I'm probably not the only one that picked up on that right away. And on that note, there's even musical cues. We haven't talked much about the music. The music in this game is amazing, but there's even musical cues on the way. What's the dungeon where you go to confront the paintress? Where like the monolith.
Mm-hmm.
On the path toward the paintress, I think toward the end of the monolith, the music that's playing, there's a musical cue that sounds dead on like To Zanarkand. Like uses a very similar leitmotif. It sounds almost exactly the same until it changes a little bit because obviously the Lorien Testard isn't trying to commit copyright infringement, but it's very clearly indicative of that song. It's very clearly indicative of that feeling. There's a reason for that, very clear reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like not a bad thing. There's a reason that these kinds of things are sprinkled in there for people like us, or even more specifically me, to pick up on. It's like I wasn't even quite aware of how much of how deep those parallels ran until I found out the full truth, and I'm like, holy crap, that's that's like dead on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Delaila did bring up the writers real quick. When we were kind of laying out kind of the conflict and the main setup for the fire, the
Yeah.
game never actually explains who the writers are and why they're in conflict with the painters, which I fucking adore. I fucking adore because it again so much of this what's left unexplained in this game. It feels like going back and watching a movie like Inception, where once you've reached the end and you have all the pieces, and then you can go back and look and read into things and put interpretations in that may or may not fit, and fans can talk here because you can go if you really want to a meta, like right away the meta level, like the writers are the writers literally of the game. And they're blaming Mael for something the writers of the game did to them and their family, or I should say, Clay is blaming. Or you could just assume that the writers are just another faction of magical artists in the magical world of magical artists in Paris, and they're for some reason at war with the painters. It doesn't really matter. It's not. It's not necessary to the central story, which is just at the end of the day a family overcoming their grief in their own ways.
So well, I guess I'm gonna have a more pessimistic take on this, in that it to me it felt more like sequel bait of,
Oh
hey,
God, I hope not.
there's more to all this than meets the eye. Stay tuned for the next Clair Obscur game.
I hope that this game stays on its own.
Want Clair Obscur to be a series where every single thing is not connected.
Right.
Well, and you know, there's that side of it, right? Like, obviously we talked a little bit. Can we put a pin in this and come back to it?
Yeah.
We gotta talk about the endings, man.
Oh, God,
Yeah, we're all over the place, but I more meant to say when you brought up sequel bait that I hope to God no, because I will change my opinion on the writers here if that comes to be.
Well, okay, this ties into the final question, so I genuinely do like.
Sure.
There's more to talk about with this. We're gonna come back to it toward the end of the episode. Yeah. Let's talk about the two endings of this game. You beat Renoir's ass, and now it comes down to who's gonna take control of the canvas. And we had to divert and talk about the fire because obviously we had to talk about why people want control of the canvas. If you pick Verso, he wants to kick Mael / Alicia out of the canvas so that he can force them, the whole family, to move on from his death. And that involves
and also putting himself to rest, because it involves destroying the last real piece of his soul, and this dude's been living over 100 years at this point, or whatever it is.
He reveals that he's immortal, and like kind of also reveals in tandem with that he doesn't want to be. He wants to be put to rest. He wants to die. Or at least fully die. He's kind of being kept on life support through Aileen, through the canvas. Yeah, right. And he wants to move on, and he wants his family to move on from him. So,
and it's also revealed the little boy ghost you've been seeing the whole time is actually Verso's soul. Yeah.
That was, to me, that was like that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
now.
Especially when you consider like some of the side quests, like finding all those monsters to defeat, because there's a nightmare monster that Clay put in his room.
Yeah.
Or his sister put in his room, and you kind of put it together that it's Clay.
Yeah. So is it safe to say like we all picked the Verso ending?
Yes.
Yeah. And I would argue that is the correct
ending. Good ending. Yeah, because the other ending is straight up creepy.
It is.
I wouldn't say it's creepy. I'd say it's bleak. But we'll talk about it. The Verso ending just definitely hands down feels like the good ending. It's him. It's him accomplishing the goal that Renoir wanted, and that what everyone realistically needed to do. Right, move on from Verso's death.
And he's tired. He's tired, boss. And he wants away because he's like 100 years old at this point.
I mean, dude, like Ben Starr is blowing up. He's getting so much work. That dude is busy. He needs to fucking stop.
I'm loving it.
He's becoming the new Troy Baker.
I'm loving it. I'm loving some competition in the market, man.
Yeah, I mean, Ben Starr is a fraction as pretentious, so I welcome more Ben Starr than Troy Baker. So let's fucking go.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, and there's a touching moment while they're at the I guess you could call it funeral or wake, whatever, a vigil, whatever you want to call it, for the Destard family, kind of saying goodbye to Verso. There's like a little moment where Mael sees the party and says goodbye to them, or at least, she has like one last look at them.
It's kind of like the end of all those 80s movies, whether it's Never-Ending Story when Falcor comes in real life and Sebastian gets to ride Falcor, the luck dragon, at all the bullies, or the end of Labyrinth when they all come back to real life, but you see all the Jim Henson puppets and then they're real and they're all partying in Sarah's room. It's that kind of classic. The dream world is still there in your imagination.
Or, at least you'll always have those memories.
I think probably the most emotional part of that ending is actually the in-between. You get that gathering of Verso, Minoko, and Esquier, who have all kind of known this was the end game, even though they were quiet about it. And they're all hugging. Yeah, I legitimately was getting a little teary-eyed.
I was bawling my eyes out.
I so very rarely in any media get teary-eyed. This is one of those times.
Yeah.
And CL kind of... Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, even though they are all fake, those were the characters that I came to know more so than most of the Destard family. So I was like, actually, this ending... You ever, do you guys play games, especially story-driven games, and you get so connected to the characters that when you roll credits, you kind of get sad because you're like, oh, I'm not going to be able to have my first time experience with these characters?
Yeah, with this, yeah.
Yeah, this
Jason's
ending...
like, literally this game.
This ending made that, a tenfold, because you're really, in terms of story, but also in terms of you as the player playing the game, are letting go of these characters. And
especially because SKA, you can relate. SKA is like any of our own stuffed animals that we grew up with, or because that's literally what he is.
Well, SKA is also my brother.
I think there's...
He is lazy and overpowered and speaks in riddles.
But right there, you can see, even though that's not exactly what it was in the game, that relation, that personal connection, which is why this story works as well as it does. It stays grounded in the characters and keeps it hyper character focused to the point where the world is all shaped by the characters and their literal moods and emotions.
Do you still think it's going to be like that in Expedition 33-2, where Mael becomes a pop star?
Oh, please stop. And I don't dislike Final Fantasy X-2. It's the one of all of the... Without getting into all that shit, it's the one I'll forgive.
And yet I keep forcing you to play Final Fantasy VII Media. More, Jason, more.
And in that regard, I feel like I'm tired, boss. Just let me go.
Go ahead, Delaila, what were you gonna say?
No, just another comment about this ending, because while they're both bleak, they're both sad in their own ways, but this one felt more like peaceful, like a letting go, like a moving forward, a new chapter.
That's the thing, right? This ending is obviously sad, but that's because the whole crux of the plot is sad.
It's bittersweet,
it's about grief and moving on from that. And the other ending, the Mael ending...
Well, before you get into that,
okay,
what I was gonna say is that the only two things about this ending that were curious to me is Lune's reaction, where she looked pissed off and she literally sat down
she's like, watch me, bro, watch me die, you condemn me to this.
Right, but I also feel like it was a parallel to his relationship with Julie, who was his lover, and how he knew, he was gonna wind up destroying that expedition, even though he loved this person and loved that expedition. He knew what the end goal was, which was to get rid of all this stuff. And I feel like for Lune, this is damn, bro, you were really lying to me this whole entire time, and I'm over here fishing for information.
Hide truths, yep.
And now you're just gonna destroy me after us having these really incredible moments. And so I thought that was a really interesting reaction. Moreover,
CL is much more go with the flow. She kind of understands.
Oh, she's been ready to go since her husband.
Right. It kind of very much sets up that dynamic between the two of them early on, where CL has already been through it, whereas Lune is she seems to have less life experience, more book experience, and is looking to get the life experience. They're kind of inverted in
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah, I mean,
Which,
even her relationship with her parents was just like very informational. Like your purpose is to learn about what's going on and to stop this, not to be a daughter that I love, you
right.
know.
Which again
But
reflects Clea and Eileen, yeah. The mother and the daughter, yeah.
All right.
well, speaking of
I keep bringing it up because it is a connection
I
to
know.
make
I know.
thematically, yeah.
And you're I know. I'm just messing with you.
and the one thing about Clea in this ending is she didn't seem very happy at the end. Like you know, Renoir and Eileen, you know, they embraced each other. Maëlle, you know, said goodbye to her painted friends, and Clea just looked kind of like and just walked away. And maybe that's because she was like never given the love like Lune, right? And so she has like no emotional connection, or maybe she's just tired of their shit and is like, well, fucking finally, I'm gonna go
I
back to
think
this war.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
just her
it's who she
personality.
is, yeah.
Yeah. She's very much, she seems to have grown up a polar opposite of Verso. But at the same time, there is one line of like brief joy, genuine joy we see from her when you beat the never ending tower, or whatever it's called.
And the
And
endless.
she says to Mael, like, "Hey, this was fun. We should do it again sometime. Now I need to get
Yeah,
back to some actual real work." And that's pretty
sure.
much it. But that's kind of her character, yeah.
Yeah. I guess like there is kind of a nice and tender and fun side to her because she also created the white Nevrons that were like
Right.
very chill and not trying to have war.
Oh,
And
the
also
friendly ones?
yeah, the friendly ones.
I thought weren't they like failed creations or something? Well, I can't quite remember the deal with them.
It's not
I
100% clear, but it's the implication is that just that they're trying to get back to their mother, who you would think from the beginning of the game when you first meet them is a
It was a
paintress,
paintress, yeah.
but it's actually because they're
yeah,
all painters and paintresses technically.
Yeah.
yeah.
But it's Clea, yeah.
And then like the relationship she had with Francois, I felt so bad for that guy. He was like all depressed and stuff
Oh
because
yeah, one
Yeah,
of my
Francois.
two of my favorite scenes in the entire game. The introduction when you first meet him in Esquier, my arch nemesis, Francois. And
yeah.
it's kind of building up that there's going to be a giant quest, but it's really just next door, which is a nice little
Yeah.
Yeah.
meta joke at poking fun at games and JRPGs. But then yeah, like later in the game, you bring the statue of Clea, the Clea lookalike, and he's bawling. Very emotional scenes with working with very little, but saying so much.
Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly.
All right. So the other ending,
Yes.
right? We talked about and and was alluding to, like they are both sad in their own ways, but like the first one is sad, but in a hopeful way,
Bittersweet,
or a
beautiful,
bittersweet way. This one is bleak. This one
and I would
is
say creepy the way that Verso goes out.
yeah. I mean, you like yeah. I'm not saying creepy is a not a good way to describe it or a bad way to describe it or anything. It's just not the I went with
Yeah,
bleak because it I guess because of the creepiness of it, right?
yeah.
This is where Mael kills Verso, uh this painted version of Verso, that so that she can stay in the canvas, and she brings him back as well as everybody else. And I sat there, like we all had to watch it after the fact on just like YouTube, because I thought you could go back and fight Renoir and see the other ending. Turns out you have to do it in the playthrough for that, I guess. So we all just watched it after the fact. But
Mm.
yeah, I was looking at some of these people, and it dawned on me eventually like who some of them were. The guy sitting next to CL, like Mael
The
brought back
husband, yeah.
her husband. I'm guessing the little boy next to Lune is her little brother. Um, didn't she
I
have a
think
little
I
brother?
see. I think that the implication alternate universe, Gustav and Sophie actually did end up having a child together, which was it was never explicitly stated, but it is secondhand implied that that was why they broke up,
Well, we
was
did
because
see.
one wanted to have a kid, one did not.
Well, we do. We like. Well, I only. yeah, I'm not sure about that entirely because
I only say it because the camera goes from him to the two of them approaching.
okay, so maybe that is what the implication is trying to be. But yeah, we do like Sophie and Gustav are brought back to life and everything with obviously within the canvas, but like they're brought back.
Ciel's husband and child.
Yeah, yep. Every like all these people are brought back by Mael, who gets to remain in the canvas, and they're at a concert for Verso. Verso is performing a piano, I guess, concerto, and like when he comes out on stage, it turns to black and white. And he looks kind of more aged. He looks more frail, and he looks like scared or he's shaking a little bit. Looks out to the crowd to see Mael or Alicia, and she's starting to deteriorate just like Aileen was.
Yeah,
Because being in the canvas for that long a period of time wears you out. It damages you. It permanently affects
Verso
you.
is very clearly aware of this before he starts playing the piano.
Yeah,
And just to reverse a little bit, before it shows us this whole like panorama, we do see Verso dying in the in between, him fading away, and just that creepy dialogue of him just saying, wonderful voice acting by Ben Starr. I don't want to live this life. I don't want to live this life over and over.
Yeah.
And Mael says, before we cut to black and open on this world she creates, because she's obviously trying to find a way to make him happy in this new world. And she says, what if I could let you age? So the implication being that she just brought him back so he can grow old again.
mm-hmm.
Even though like he might not have physically been old, spiritually he was already old, and now he's getting
Right.
even older. And he's aware while everybody else is just scarily oblivious. It's like some kind of weird fantasy horror where he's essentially
Yeah.
her slave to her grief coping mechanism.
Right.
Yeah, it's like when a family member is terminally ill, but you're refusing to
pull the plug. Yeah,
pull the plug, even though they signed a form for you to do that kind of thing.
yeah.
It's very sad. And also the other characters, they had smiles, but they didn't seem happy, and they didn't seem like themselves in terms of how I remember them being in the painted world, which was also added this level of creepiness.
Because it's not even like it's not a world that's allowed to exist on its own. It's an idealistic version of that from Mael's perspective.
It also doesn't have any more influence from Aileen or Renoir or anybody else who was fidgeting. It's all Mael. Yeah,
right. It really is just her vision of a perfect but artificial life. So it isn't really like that. That's a good observation for sure. Like it really, no one would be happy in that kind of circumstance. It's
except Mael. Yeah,
well, except
which
for
even
Mael,
then,
right?
which
is
even
the
then,
point.
how happy is she, or is she just kind of fading away? Yeah.
I mean, I guess
Right.
it's better than what her real version was, which she can't do anything. I mean, which is a commentary on disability, I suppose.
Again, that's why earlier on I hinted, like, is Mael actually not only the point of view character but the real villain? Because everybody else works through their emotions.
I mean,
and it's understandable why she would be tempted to just stay there forever. Obviously, they set up a good motivation. It's just she seems to be the one that has the potential to get lost if you make that decision for that ending.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
is she the ultimate villain?
I think in that ending's case, yes, but I also would like to know the metrics of who chooses, of how many people have chosen which ending.
yeah.
I'd be
But
curious.
even if you don't choose that, even if you choose Verso still has to battle Mael to get her to get out.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, but I feel like I don't know. I feel like there's a very stark difference between
Yeah.
villain and antagonist.
I think the real answer, you just hit the nail on the head. It's antagonist in that plot beat. The real answer is that there are no villains. That it's a couple of different perspectives on approaching these emotions.
Well, I stand by what I just said. Like in the case of that ending, I think you could paint Mael as a villain. I think otherwise she does have a bit of antagonist
Okay.
as well as protagonist, you know?
Yeah, if we're not assuming that the Verso ending is the canon, which we don't have no reason to, they haven't said to, so yeah.
Yeah, right. And it's also like hopefully there is no need to call either one of these endings a canon ending, right? Like
Right.
that would imply that whatever happened in this story is going to matter going forward, and I don't think we'll talk about it again a little more later, but I don't think we really want that to be a consideration.
And I
Right.
can see someone willingly choosing this ending because, well, according to us, we're playing the game, and so really none of this is real. If you
Yeah.
want to go meta with that, but
Yeah,
it's
it's the same moral conundrum in the inverse. You know, if it's so easy to destroy them, it's so easy to keep them and make them your slave. Yeah.
well, I was more thinking a little less possessive, more so like these are the characters that I grow to love. I don't know shit about Clea. I don't know shit about the real world or what's going on. So I'm gonna preserve the world that I came connected to, because that's what we know as the gamers, and as the gamers versus the painters versus the writers. But you know, and also just kind of having that sort of empathy that like Mael is suffering and she has really no life, and she's not a vegetable, but like it's really hard to live in the way that she's living. And I mean, I don't think any of us can really understand what that's like, but I have, you know, worked with people in similar circumstances, and it's really hard for them to find that kind of like joy and find a purpose when there's just so, you know, I can understand why someone would want to have that level of escapism. I mean, I want to have escapism and I don't suffer from that kind of thing, which is why I play video games. So it's
Right.
like an understandable ending, although it is, in my opinion, when it plays out, creepy.
I mean, just from Ben Starr's performance as Verso is fading away, the main game Verso, after Mael defeats him, just the way he delivers that line, "I don't want to live like this," is it's so haunting.
Yeah,
God, Ben Starr is so fucking good. Jesus
yeah,
Christ.
he is.
Ben Starr is really really good,
Yeah.
man. That
Well,
dude.
also, Mael doesn't want to live like that, except the difference is that's a real world, you know.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
you know,
in the world she wants to live in, he's happy, and that's the closest she can get. She thinks at least to make him, and it's kind of implied that like Verso is just going through the motion and making the sacrifice to make her happy because he really has no other option.
yeah,
Because he
and
stops for a moment before he plays, like looking at
yeah.
his like weathered fingers. Yeah.
Mhm. And also the reason why I chose Versos because I was like, can't she just paint like another fake world where like this version of Verso like it gets his piece.
I think the
Um,
implication is that because this canvas has the last living piece of his soul, so once it's gone, all authentic pieces of Verso are gone
Yeah.
that were
yeah,
originally part of Verso.
true.
Yeah, they can't like make a truly recreate him after losing that. So that's
Yeah.
why there's so much conflict for control over it, at least as far as like Eileen in terms of her grief, and my Alicia for hers as well.
Yeah,
And like not even just grief but guilt, I would say. Um
sure. Yeah.
for the fact that he sacrificed himself to save her.
Hmm.
Definitely a bit
Absolutely.
of that at hand.
And I like also how the gestural were kind of like a way to process that rebirth. Um and how SKA says like same but different. I feel
Yep.
like that in and of itself is just so powerful, even though it's such a simple and whimsical and vague statement.
Yeah.
Because even if you bring someone back, they're not the same.
It's like a meta commentary on almost the process of art itself, the process of iteration, where little pieces of you and your inspirations are going on, but it changes each time you make an edit to something or tap up a painting in some way.
Yeah.
Same, but different. It's so fucking profound, but like
Yeah.
simple.
Exactly. And then like Monoko's like trainer and master, like he's the one that raised Monoko essentially in the painted world,
Hmm.
obviously. And
Hmm.
so like it was just really cool just learning about everything and everyone and all these creations. But
Yeah.
Claire's going through some shit, let me tell you, because them Nevrons are creepy looking.
Just because you brought up Monoko, and I realized I didn't say that line. You know, I'll never go with you. There'll be danger. There'll be fighting and violence. Okay, I'll go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many good lines
Yeah,
in this
and the
game,
voice
and
acting is so good all around. I for the long time, for some
dude,
reason, I thought Marcus doing Minoko. I didn't realize he was. I mixed them up.
Wait,
yeah.
you thought
Well,
who was doing Minoko?
Andy Serkis.
Oh, Andy Serkis.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
No, all the performances were really, really great. Sorry,
even
Yeah.
go
the
ahead, Delaila.
data pads, like the voice acting in the data pads, I was just like,
Yeah.
damn. Or the expedition journals. I forget what they're called.
Yeah.
And
I
the
was like,
expedition
The
damn.
journals
audio
was
logs, whatever.
and
they're
Yeah.
this one gets the bonus Kwasnicki point for expedition or for what do you want to call it? Data pads that I actually read. Or in this
You
case
didn't need
listen
to
Well,
read
to.
them.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I did read them
Okay.
and they run the gamut from like really emotional to funny little side bits.
I
Like
mean, how about the guys that preferred to travel naked because it didn't they didn't have clothes or gear impeding them, and they almost got to the paintress.
Yeah.
yeah.
And the one, like, I think the gomage happened right when he had reached Lumière,
Yeah.
to tell them
Yeah.
something.
And if you're paying attention to those logs, they do drop hints of incoming story beats. At least the ones that are more easily like they're clearly out along the main path.
Hmm.
Um, they drop hints at twists that are about to come. Like one of the expeditions finds out, presumably about Verso and the secret right before they
Yeah.
die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that all the expeditions like had their own thing. Like it wasn't just like every expedition was like a hero's journey or whatever. Like no, some of them just died because like they ate mushrooms from SKA and they were poisonous, and others were there just to like build the world, and um some were there just to get drunk and see how far they can go. It was just really,
Yeah.
really cool. I
And
enjoyed it.
again, it goes right back to that thematic element you were just commenting on of iteration, and each one it's almost like a metaphorical version of that theme that is on one hand emotional, working through a grief, iterating, is represented in art, but also represented in the world and how each of these expeditions gets a little bit further to the goal.
Hmm.
Again, so profound, so yet so simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you guys want to talk about some gameplay?
Yeah, sure. Well, can I just say real quick,
Hmm.
and maybe we could talk about music before gameplay, is
Oh,
that
more about music. Okay.
yeah, well, no, I mean I was just gonna say like when I started the game,
Yeah.
the first like minute, I was like I just listened to the whole song of the start screen. I was like, this
Yeah.
is insane how good this is.
Yeah.
And that just continued throughout the entire game, and I look forward to an orchestra of this game because I feel like it's up there with like Nier
Oh
and Final
hell
Fantasy and
yeah,
Zelda.
yeah.
The only thing about the music that was like, ugh, is that sometimes the opera stuff in the overworld got to me a bit. And that's partially because like my cat passed away, so I was like constantly crying listening to this very like impactful music. But like hearing the singing all the time, I was just like, sometimes I just wish it was more ambient. But other than that, like fantastic music composition. The combination of the music and the color and the storytelling, the voice acting, it was all just like beautifully done.
And there's a lot of variation. There's a lot of range in
Yeah,
the score for
Minoko's
this
theme.
game.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Not
love
even
it.
just like not even just like character themes and stuff. But, like there's like certain dungeons, certain like areas that have like very distinct. I'm thinking like the Flying Waters. I especially loved how like
Oh,
the
yeah.
ambient music in the background would blend, or would it would lead into the battle music like almost like flawlessly, and it would like turn this really ambient vibey music into a fucking like lo-fi club banger.
Yeah.
And it was just like
Yeah.
really, really, really cool how like that area in particular worked with the music.
And the same with the it's an end game area, but the one that leads into the Simon fight and the music behind the Simon fight.
Mhm.
The dungeon that precedes the
Ugh,
Simon fight going into the
so
Simon
good.
fight.
Yeah.
Which runs the gamut from the operatic choral stuff that Delilah was talking about to hard JRPG rock anthems that you would expect to jazzy stuff like Monoko's. Yeah, it's a good amount of variety. It's a phenomenal soundtrack, and
I mean, I definitely look forward to getting this one on vinyl.
yeah,
Oh
Tell you
yeah,
that.
you already know.
and it's it's been over a month haven't played it, and still ingrained the same way. Very various field tracks from Nier Automata were and still are to this day. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that this one rivals Near Automata for me, but it definitely was a great soundtrack. This was a great soundtrack, and kudos to oh my gosh, the name Lorien Testard for what they composed for this, because
I would say this one only has a beat, and so I like when soundtracks utilize either one or a couple of leitmotifs and have it layered in every piece, and this is one of those soundtracks that does that. Um, where it's really two. You could argue one, but it's kind of two motifs that are wound through just about everything.
Yeah. I think it's the music and also just the way they designed the characters and the voice acting that made me have like a really emotional impact just in the first hour with the Gomage, which is not really something that I experienced so early in a game since like I think The Last of Us. So that was really, really, really done well. Just everything. I really like this game. I have criticisms though, and I think most of that is gonna come when we talk about gameplay a little bit.
Well, let's get into it, because yeah, I got some fucking criticisms for the gameplay.
Yeah.
Jason, I want you to start off with just like, because I feel like you, out of the three of us, obviously enjoyed this game the most. So like the gameplay, with this blending, and also you've been very critical of other hybrid combat systems in games that we've covered. So like, what about this gameplay really grabbed you?
The turn based was turn based, and and I don't mean to be so reductive, but the turn based was turn based, and the actual reactive component of it was the reactive component. Um, and there was skill inherent in there, and you are required to engage with it, even though it does with the dodge component. Kind of give you a middle ground and a way out, and also through the progression systems, of which there are multiple. Um, uh, to try to put it as simply as I can, there are multiple gameplay systems, each one very simple, very easy, anybody can get into, working in tandem at once, working without much, really, for me, any friction to create much more complexity. There's a very low skill ceiling, or I'm sorry, there's a very low skill floor, very high skill ceiling. And in between there, you have multiple really well done progression systems that allow for if you want to, you can just use the bare bones. If you really want to, you can dig in and do a ton of build crafting for a ton of different play styles. And when you consider that each character has their own style of play, essentially built within the turn-based framework with parrying, dodging, it just was all sublime. This was the gameplay system I've been looking for not just years, decades at this point for this kind of game.
Wow. Nice. I mean, for me, I thought the entire base story, not counting the extra optional stuff, was fine. I again, you guys know I told you after we finished Fantasian, which we did an episode on that, and also right before that we did an episode on Metaphor Refantasia. I said, I'm done with turn-based games, y'all. I can't do this anymore. But then this game came and I was clearly intrigued, and them adding the parry and dodge mechanics does add a level of it's less passive than typical turn-based game where I could, put the game down and go pee while it's the enemy's turn, or go on my phone or whatever. Whereas here, like, I had to stay locked in, which was fine. And I think for the base game characters, like the bosses, it functioned great. It was the side stuff where the bosses started to get more gimmicky, and it was like it defied turn-based, where some bosses would go for like 20 plus turns, or like before
Oh, you're
or they
talking
would
about like gross tete, where literally the entire. I mean, you can technically beat him when you get powerful enough on attacks alone. However, it's intended to be that he skips over your turns, and each one adds an additional bounce, and he bounces 1, 2, 3, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and you're supposed to basically
in
keep
groups of
parrying him.
2.
Yeah, it increases each turn the amount of
Yeah.
attacks he does. But the idea is you're supposed to keep parrying until he gets to like 24 or 25 hits, and
24.
then he self-destructs.
Yeah, that character, and there was some other gimmicky ones. Like there was one I think in the masked area. I forget what it was called, with all their like emotive masks. Where one of the axons was. Where I think it's like you had to parry every attack
You're
and
talking
or
about the
counter.
giant one in the middle of the ocean standing there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was called Visages, actually. And there was like a chromatic enemy there that you had to parry and or counter, or else you were automatically losing, and it was an automatic wipe. And like eventually I got through it once I figured it out, but it was just a little frustrating. And like when enemy teams go for like 20 turns before I get to retaliate, I'm just like annoyed at that point, because I'm like, okay, like I like dodging and parrying in games. Obviously I like, the Souls games. I like Sekiro. I like I just played first Berserker Kazan, which was also Ben Star.
Yeah.
And that has, a lot of that stuff, and I could get down with that. But then in this kind of game, it just, for the outside bosses, the optional bosses, especially the final optional boss, which is Simon, I was just straight up pissed off. I was like, this is just annoying. It wasn't fun. And I feel like it just doesn't work when they don't give you a chance to like learn the patterns. And that it wasn't as egregious with like the chromatic enemies. I feel like those eventually I worked my way around, but it got pretty bad with certain optional enemies, and especially with Simon. I was just like, ugh, this is not a good boss.
It's funny you put it
Simon
like that, because I'm the opposite. Coming out of Simon, when I beat him, felt like when I beat Millennium. And it did, and again, going to what I said earlier to emphasize my answer to Mark's question earlier, the reason that I enjoyed this combat so much is because it was just as dependent on my build crafting and theory crafting of my party as it was my actual skill in learning the fight. It was such a masterful blend, in my opinion, and it felt very similar to that way I had to end up approaching it in Elden Ring for Millennia, which was equal parts buildcraft and skill in learning the fight. And I felt like a master coming out of it. It was so satisfying in a way I haven't felt since then.
On one hand, I think it's a very cool blend, right? I think and this is where that Sekiro influence I was talking about comes in, because the parrying and dodging were directly taken from Sekiro. Having that with traditional JRPG turn-based combat, and the style of Persona 5 in particular, where each action is kind of mapped to a single button, so it's very fast, it's very fluid, and it keeps you in the action in kind of both ways, right? When you're taking your turn, and when you're potentially evading during the enemy's turn, or deflecting during the enemy's turn, whatever you just decide to do. I think I agree with a lot of what Delaila said, where, I mean, for me, some of the parry timing, some of the telegraphs that enemies start doing, it makes it almost prohibitive to kind of go into a fight and learn it and not get frustrated, especially with some of those late game fights where you have to go into a fight and you might have to learn the mechanics, but it gets really, really irritating when a lot of those attacks will one-hit kill your party. And maybe you have to go in and change some Pictos around, change some Luminas around to maybe prevent that. But, and you guys have heard me complain about this in the past, there's no presets. And you have a giant list of Pictos and Luminas to sort through. It's a lot. And it's very annoying to go through that giant list and toggle things on and off
Right.
at will to adjust for a specific fight, especially when you have a specific build in mind, and then you have to change that to match the bosses or the dungeon's gimmick or whatever. Those are the things that really bothered me. The fact that there's so many different Pictos, and they get down to very like minute details where I almost felt like half
Which
of them
can
were
add up to a
useless.
lot. Especially like if you're going for like a one hit kill Mael 10, 20, 30, 90 million like every bit of extra damage you can like from like literally every source of damage percentage you want to throw on there, you got to go.
Yeah, which is like what I wound up doing toward the end, because when I was fighting some of the optional bosses, I said I died to Clay enough times where I said, yeah, enough's enough. I'm making my L a nuke build based on something I found on YouTube. And
I never had trouble with Clay.
I got her my first try, but the fight lasted for like an hour,
Well,
and I was like, "What the hell?"
Well, it's because she heals herself. Yeah.
That's the problem, is you have to parry every single attack, or else she heals herself. And for me, I don't know. I had a lot of trouble getting parry timing down for a lot of these bosses.
So here's the thing that I don't think many people get, and it should be explicitly stated. I can say that this is probably a criticism. Parrying is not based on visuals. It's based on audio
sound.
cue.
It's based on rhythm. I gathered
which can get very easily cluttered out. But like theoretically, you can do all this blindfolded just by listening.
Oh, for sure. I totally agree with that. That being said, I still floundered a lot.
Because people get fucked up by the visuals.
Yeah,
that can be misleading. Yeah.
But it's like even trying to listen for the audio cues. I don't know. I had a lot of difficulty.
It doesn't help. You just gotta learn every fight. Yeah.
Yeah, and when you're getting one hit killed by a lot of these attacks, it just makes it very like Simon. Simon is obviously the most egregious example. He's the hardest boss in the game. If you got like getting through his first phase and then having to deal with the second phase where he's attacking twice for each attack, and now needing to relearn the timing for that, I don't know, man. I was like, yeah, I've had enough of this game. I'm ready to be done. Mael, please kill him before he can even get a word in edgewise.
I was all about it, especially because I waited to beat the game until after I beat Simon, and I could. By the time I was done with him, I accidentally broke through the third phase, but I was able to parry all the way through the first and second, and could get most of the way through one wave of third phase attacks in one practice run. But I felt like the master. Like I'd mastered the combat system. And it felt extremely satisfying, both on a build craft and on a skill-based level.
And that's fine. And I understand why that can be appealing to some people. But I feel like this was a turn-based RPG that had those as options, where you could go into any fight, not take any damage, and completely kill whatever, if you just had the skill at timing those deflections, at timing those parries, those dodges, whatever. If you had the skill, the ability to do that, like you could get through anything you wanted to. But when that becomes like a core thing that you need to do, that you need to be able to do perfectly in order to get through the fights, to me it just becomes unfun.
We're also talking about literally the end game of bosses. So like this is the same conversation we had about
but it's not even just Simon. Like I don't know. I had it with other endgame.
I didn't have. Oh no, I had
a lot of gimmick fights.
I had no problems with any of the main story bosses.
Well,
the main story.
I'm not saying story bosses.
Yeah.
So the story was frankly pretty easy overall, end to end. I'm talking just about like when everything in endgame requires you, instead of strategizing, to just perfectly parry every single attack in order to get through it.
That's not true.
I feel like that's pretty true.
No, it's not. You can dodge. You can make builds that rely on you dying in order to do that. There's so much you can do.
Well, okay. Let me be clear. I do think that the build variation that you can have with this game is pretty stark. But that comes in the fact that there are so many different pictos, and sorting through them is a fucking living nightmare. And with no presets, it's just even more of a nightmare.
I mean, I can agree with you on the quality of life thing with the presets, but just the complexity, the skill, like I said before, the skill floor is very low. You can engage with that to the extent that you want to in terms of complexity. You could just give yourself massive health pools and what have you, and that's it. Not really have a strategy, but at the same time, you can go very, very deep to very high skill ceiling.
And I agree with you for the majority of the game. I still adamantly feel like there's a lot of endgame bosses where perfect parrying everything is a requirement, and I don't like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've played Sekiro and Elden Ring and obviously all those games. I'm actually surprised that this game was inspired by Sekiro, because Sekiro has like perfect parrying. Like if there's a game that has perfect parrying mechanics, it is that game. And this game,
it's the physical hitbox,
I don't think the pairing was quite well in this game. It wasn't terrible, and for the
Because
main
it's
game,
like
it
I
was
said, it's
fine.
sound based. It's not based on the physical hitbox.
Right, but also just I feel like in Sekiro and those other games, it also gives you a chance to learn boss fights because you're not getting just one hit
One
killed.
hit killed. Yeah.
And so you can learn those things within one session without having to like keep fighting the boss over and over and over again. And I got pissed off because I actually tried fighting Simon legit with that one shot. And I got to his third phase just pairing and learning his shit. And then I got team wiped. And then I lost. So I was just like, you know what? Absolutely not. He is getting one
to third
shot.
phase. Yeah, I got a third phase on a multitude of times, and I was actually progging in the third phase when I accidentally one shot him with my L. And like it was fucking awesome. I was like, hell yeah! Like I had a lot of fun, and I very much or adamantly oppose the idea that a lot of these bosses require. Yes, the optimal way to beat a lot of these mechanics is perfect pairing, but you don't have to engage with the perfect pairing mechanic to beat them.
Again, let me rephrase. I'm not necessarily saying it's a requirement, but it feels like it is.
It's the intended way. Yeah.
Sure, right. And I'm sure there's builds out there that you can put together that can get you through the fight without having to perfect parry every attack. But it feels like you have to. It feels like a requirement.
The gross Tede fight that she brought up, the one with the bouncing, where
early
for most of the game, the speed of the boss is gonna be too high for you to get a turn. But you can overlevel that fight to the point where you just ignore. He doesn't one hit kill, and you just ignore, and you're too fast for him, and you can kill him.
But also
before he does anything to you, yeah.
But also for that fight in particular, for that boss in particular, you don't have to parry. You can dodge all of his attacks.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because it's not based on how you react to his attacks. It's just letting him get up to that number. But that's like splitting hairs. Yeah, I'm not saying that it's necessarily a requirement, but it really feels like it is for a lot of that end game content, and I don't like that like at all, because I definitely had a lot of trouble with a lot of these fights nailing the timing down on parrying, and with the timing being.
Well, that sounds like a you issue, bro.
Yeah, no, get good skill issue.
I'm just yeah.
My bigger issue is just the that, and like, you know, I'm sitting here complaining about like a bunch of options, right? The amount of pictos. Ooh, I have options. Why am I complaining about that? Because a lot of them just feel useless, or a lot of them feel like so niche that it's like, I'm never going to turn this on. I'm never going to use this. And I feel like the circumstances where I would use it require a build so hyper specific, and it just doesn't feel as useful or as good a build as like so many others that I could choose.
Yeah, I mean that's my issue too, is like when I play games, I don't like to look at like what's the mid max or like what's the best way to approach this or that. And I felt like I had to succumb to that when it came to Simon, and that kind of bothered me. But then I had to go pick up like, you know, pick those that I didn't already have, maybe that I missed in the world, or like, you know, do a few fights to like get the Luminas, because the whole like main game, I'm pretty much just unlocking Luminas, right? I'm just equipping stuff just to have it there so that I can have that flexibility. And then finally, when I had all this stuff available to me and I was trying different things, it's like, well, none of this stuff is actually working for this fight.
And I also did not like that
until I looked it up.
I also didn't like that upgrading Pictos was entirely by either finding them at a higher level or purchasing them from merchants. I feel like there needed to be more of a progression system inherent to making interesting decisions when upgrading your Pictos than your weapons. Because there's a lot more choice inherent with which Pictos and Luminas you select, and giving them a more direct way of leveling and progressing would have maybe been a little more meaningful.
See, now you're hitting on, if there's one actual like legit systemic criticism I have, it is the actual Pictos themselves, simply because the stats are associated with them. And so you might want to be using one to get rid of a major cost for one of your Luminas to shovel it onto a Picto, but you don't have requisite stats. That being said, if you're finding Luminas and Pictos to not be worth it and builds to be niche, Uh, I cycled through lots of different builds for lots of different characters, and they can all get up to serious damage. Like there's way more flexibility and
I
versatility within the
well, that's the
system than you're
no,
giving it
that's
credit for.
no, that's almost what I'm saying, Jason, is that there is so
Yeah.
much flexibility, there is so much versatility, but it almost feels overwhelming because there's so many different options, and there's some that just like they just feel like
It's
it's just
it's only
it
over.
just
Yeah,
it
it's
almost feels
only
bloated.
it's
That's
only
kind of what I'm
overwhelming
getting
if
at.
you want to engage with that. Said you can just throw in your basic stat like defense and health stats if you want to just try to tank
Well,
through
I'm
the
not even
games if
talking
you
about,
want.
but that's the thing is I didn't care about the stats as much. I didn't care about how much health or how much speed or whatever
Yeah, I'm
a
saying
Picto would give
throw on
me.
shields, throw on just your base 25%
But
damage for the X, and
I'm
yeah,
talking about the fact that there's so many different Pictos that do like plus 25% break damage if enemies burning. Plus 25% break damage if enemy is silenced or something. Like
yeah,
there's so many of those, and it's like there
because it
some of
and
these
that plays
status
in.
effects.
No, that plays into each character's own individual mechanics, which characters you're using, which builds. Some characters are going to produce burn. You can have I use burns almost
Well,
throughout the
yeah,
entire game, and each character
because
has ways of creating burns if you want to switch their skills out. That's what I meant earlier when I said each layer of mechanical skill, mechanical planning, and then progression is simple on its own, but they all convalesce on each other
no,
to
and
create a yeah.
I agree with you, Jason. I agree with all that. I agree with what you're saying. I'm saying that, but I'm saying that with regards to the Pictos in particular, there's so many options, and there's so many that do similar things, but slightly different based on one simple factor, and it just feels like a ton of information coming at you. It's like in isolation, yeah, all those systems can be simple, but they all do coalesce together, and they kind of have to coalesce together,
Hmm.
and you have to build your build around that, and I don't know. Yeah, you can get really nitty gritty with the options. You can get really nitty gritty with the choices that you make when building out each character's individual build. But it with how many different Pictos there are, that some of them are just like very minorly different. It's
Yeah, but
overwhelming.
by the no, it's not because by the time you have all
Well,
those
not to
pictos, you're
you, but
far. No, by the time you get all those, have built up a collection of luminas and pictos of that,
mhm.
you've already been enough through the game and have unlocked enough of the progression systems that you understand that each one is an iteration based on a different status exchange. Each one is clearly targeted towards different builds or different wanted effects. Like you build up that huge collection of luminas over the course of the game. You have very little to start with. And
Yeah,
at the
I
same
know.
time, you're unlocking abilities. Each one you can see why you might choose a build based on one ability versus the other as you get to those high end abilities. I feel like it all very naturally unfolds and builds up over the course of the game to the point where once you have access to that wide range of stuff and can freely choose between all these builds very easily, you understand what it all means. You've learned it over the course of 50, 60 hours, 70 hours.
Yeah, but I also think it's a major miss in not having presets
No. I agree with
for
that. I'm not disagreeing with you about the. That's just a quality of life thing.
really,
I'm just saying
that's kind
the
of, well,
main
that's also
system.
why I call it out for feeling overwhelming, right? Because if you want to switch builds, you can't just switch your weapon and equip different Pictos. You have to go through and reassign all your Luminas to match that specific build.
Sure,
And
sure.
doing that takes up a ton of
I'll
time
agree
and
with you.
menus.
I'll agree with you on that quality of life thing. I'm just saying the actual design, like it shits all over fucking Rebirth and Remake,
Well, we're not here to shit on anything. We're just here
but
to
it
talk
does.
about the
It
game.
just does.
The
We're
only
not here to shit
thing
on anything.
about the combat that I found uh I didn't like was more of a UI issue, which I really like the UI generally. Like I like that, like it was very Persona 5 inspired, cool animation and stuff like that. But
Hmm.
sometimes like the angle of the camera, especially if I had Monoko in my party, which was almost always because I wanted all the feet, is that
Hmm.
he would like cover the entire screen, and I was basing
Yeah.
it partially off sound but also partially off visuals, and which did mess me up and trip me up, but that's because I was so into the music and I just wanted to hear the music, and that was kind of like overpowering the sound cues. So that was also a part of it that I wasn't much of a fan of.
Yeah,
But
Minoko's camera moves in a way that's a little different. Yeah.
yeah, but
With
overall,
other
like,
characters too.
Yeah, with other characters. But overall, like I enjoyed the combat, especially for the main game. It was just the extra optional stuff that it started to fall off and show its cracks a little bit for me. I didn't feel that satisfaction that I felt like when I fought other, bosses in like Souls games or whatever, Sekiro or whatever the case, when I fought these other bosses. But one thing that I just hope that doesn't happen is, while I do like this game with its innovation in combat, I hope that not every turn-based game becomes this.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
I
I don't want to
agree.
give that impression as much as I adore this. And think it's in terms of trying to bring some more live action elements to fundamentally. That's what this is. This is fundamentally first and foremost a turn-based system,
Yeah.
with some reactive elements and real-time elements mixed in. And no, not every game needs to be this. I'm just saying that this is very, very good. And obviously,
Yeah.
there's quality of life that can go into it and some nipping and tucking. But on the whole, I think systemically, it's very well designed.
Yeah, and I love how all the characters just played differently. Like I think Lune was the most quintessential like mage like that
Mhm.
you would get in like this kind of RPG game, but I love like the card system, CL was basically Gambit and Monoko had all these feed and
Yeah, Minoko was basically Blue Mage from Final Fantasy. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I like how like distinct each character played, so that was cool too.
Yeah, and like I'm not a guy. I just want to make it clear. Like I'm not saying I thought the combat was bad or that I didn't like it. I just think that I don't like when there's this much build diversity. I find it overwhelming scrolling through a massive,
as a
massive list.
as a Diablo play, a longtime Diablo, just
Yeah,
general action RPG player who is used to min maxing. In addition to my JRPG, bona fides, I love this shit. I live for this
but
shit.
but Diablo, I do feel is fundamentally different than how the builds work in this game, and I don't feel it's quite on the same.
No, no, no. I more just meant to say that if there's complexity, I will sniff it out and play with it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And that's fine. It's not like I don't like complexity. I just think that it's overwhelming having to scroll through a giant list of things, reading
Yeah.
every single one, and then picking a
There's
build.
quality
Based
of life. And probably
I
there were limitations on. Didn't have time because each Lumina, or not Lumina, the Pictos need to be learned by one character, and then they can be equipped to offset on one. So part of the
Mhm.
reason, I would imagine, I don't know if this is the case, is on the back end they probably thought about doing a QOL thing like you're talking about, like sets, but then realized how it interferes with all the systems they have. And I'm just thinking from the perspective of a team that doesn't have as much resources, but it
Yeah.
probably, yeah. But I do agree with you that that's not an excuse. That kind of QOL probably should be there if you're going to have that much information.
And they
Yeah,
might
because
patch it in. Like I think Echoes of Wisdom, when I finished it finally on the Switch 2, when I started it when it released, it had a bunch of like echoes that you can use. It was overwhelming and just unwieldy, like going through all of them. And eventually they
yeah.
added like a favorites option or something like that, and that really helped
Okay.
the quality of life. So maybe Samfall will patch something like that
Yeah,
in.
because it's just like when especially when you're talking about all the different like potential stats that not even stats, but like just like damage increases or damage reductions or whatever. When you're talking about all that stuff, there's like a filter tab that you could switch to like offensive, defensive, and stuff, but that only does so much to filter these things out and sort through a list of like dozens, if not over 100 different options that you have. And it's just I don't want to sit there and spend like an hour uh trying to decide how I want to formulate my characters and change their builds up. Uh that's time that I would much more want to spend like actually playing the game.
But that is
Um
part of playing the game, though.
yeah, you know what I mean though. Like you know what I'm trying to say.
I
I
do,
don't
but at the same time, that's how it always was. Classic Golden Age JRPGs. So much of the game was spent in those menus.
No. Yeah, but not no, not doing all those
No,
minute
no, no, no,
different choices.
not nearly as complex in the build craft. No, because
Right, and that's
most
what
of the
I'm getting
time,
at.
each character had a very basic track they were on.
Right. If like this is like for a game that is so inspired by a lot of older JRPGs and in particular Final Fantasy games. Final Fantasy games were very, very simple in how you build your characters, and
But
this
not all
is.
JRPGs at that time, and that's what I love about this is the complex.
But
It's very low on the skill ceiling, so you don't need the complexity, but it's there if you want to explore it.
I'm just simply talking about the main influences for this game in particular, with calling those out, which the producer and director called out: Final Fantasy 8, 9, and 10. And obviously the Picto system comes from 9. Like,
Yeah,
it's
that's.
not much of a
I remember when you
surprise.
grow. I remember when I said that to you and you groaned because you hadn't started playing yet.
Yeah. And at least this doesn't have the thing that 9 has that bothers me, that makes me
Yeah.
like not like 9 as much. Which is where your progression is tied to what gear you have equipped at level up.
Yeah, the gear just works different generally here, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's all I'm trying to say. That's it just, I don't like giant lists and having to read through and sort through them and change minute details about my characters that often or that much. And I feel like I did have to do that way more than I'd like to in this game. I would like and prefer a simpler system. That's just me, though. I know that I'm not speaking for
Okay.
everyone. I'm just speaking for myself.
Go play your Rebirth and Mash Square. I'm just kidding. I'm just fucking with you.
Nah, them damn materia management was annoying.
Stop at you.
Oh my god, I need plus 10 more attack, so I do 10 more damage when I hit square. Mark is so mad right now.
Are you done? God. All right. We is there any, I mean, I feel like there's so much more we could talk about with this game, but we
Yeah.
have to really move
We've
on to the
already
final
touched. Yeah, we've
question.
already touched on pretty much everything, even if tangentially. But
Can I ask
Yeah.
just what was your favorite like location aesthetically? If you know. I
I think
personally really like Flying Waters and I think Old Lumiere. It was very like Elden Ring Old Lumiere. That was pretty cool.
I might actually go Flying Waters, yeah, because the music just worked really well for that area. That area was
Yeah.
really, really cool. Like, I think I might actually go Flying Waters.
Yeah.
Really
And I like
early
that.
zone, but I thought I dug it a lot.
Yeah, and I like that all the locations didn't just rely on like typical biomes that we get in games, like a snowy
Yeah.
area or whatever. You had like coliseums with like it's cloth, and you had the visages, which is like all these emotive masks everywhere. It was just really, really cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna cheat and say the 4 Axon areas just because of
Well, you gotta
how.
pick one. You gotta pick one.
No, because it's not just the visual aesthetic of the area, it's also how thematically they utilize it all to tell story through the environments and the music and the fights. If I had to pick one, it would obviously be the Flying Manor. Clay has one. Second
Mhm.
runner up would be Mael's, the Endless Climbing Tower.
The Reacher.
Yeah,
Yeah. That was a cool one too.
but I
Yeah.
also do like the Versa one, the Lies Through Truth or Truth Through Lies, and the Siren one, Alien.
See then.
I think those
Yeah.
4 areas were probably my favorite in the game.
Yeah.
Although I did
Visages
love
was
all
really cool.
the gestural villages and the secret one, the secret
Yeah.
Coliseum you can find in the area.
Yeah, the Gestural Village and the arenas were great. I also like do want to acknowledge that the beaches having like
Ugh.
a different mini game at each one. Some of them a little better than others, but
Oh god,
I did enjoy the fact that this game did have like mini games. It had something else to kind of go do.
And they were optional, yeah.
Yeah,
Like
and they were
damn,
optional.
all that for Minoko's bathing suit. I was like, oh man.
I think the only one that I really like loathed was the volleyball one.
Oh.
It's
That
funny you said that. The one that I hated was the where you have to climb up spot by
Yeah,
spot,
where you get the Minoko
where you
bathing
climb
suit.
to the top of the waterfall
Oh,
with all
when
the bubbles falling down. Yeah,
see, like that one was kind of
Oh.
annoying, but I wasn't I
I
wasn't getting as pissed off as I was with missing one of the not volleyball, but like,
yeah,
you
I know what
throw a
you're talking about.
burning gestrel or burning something
Yeah,
at you, and you had to punch it back.
I liked all the other ones, including the parkour. I found the parkour to be fun, even when it was at its most frustrating.
Like,
But
is that the one with all the random objects that you had to just like climb up
yeah,
and
yeah,
Yeah.
up and up and up and up and up?
parkour.
Yeah.
Yeah, The only one I didn't like was climbing with the bubbles coming down, because your movement is delayed from when you actually push it. So it's randomized when they come down from the top, so you can just get in a situation where there's nothing you can do. You're just done for that run.
I still didn't think it was as frustrating as being on the raft and the fucking having to punch things back at the
No,
end.
you're not the only person to say that. I just find it funny because I did that first try. I don't know how everybody else had so much trouble.
The last level of that took me a while. It was tough.
Yeah, it was tough. I remember that.
Especially because like they start coming at you real fast, and there's a delay in which you can punch forward again.
Yeah.
So getting the timing right and aiming it properly, just like I don't know, it took me several tries and a lot of frustration.
Yeah.
Okay, is there anything else we want to talk about before the final question?
Lighting in this game is sick. That's it.
Yeah.
The what is?
The lighting.
It is.
Oh, the lighting. Oh, well, funny you
Yeah.
mention the lighting. Because I guess leading right into the final question. So they kind of I said in an interview, I want to say it's the same one from RPG Site that I was talking about. Where the title of the game is Clair Obscur Expedition 33. And the Clair Obscur part is what's a little up for, or was kind of questionable going into this game. And really what that means is it's two French words, light and dark, and it's a reference to an Italian painting style, and I'm going to butcher this Italian pronunciation as well, called chiaroscuro, I think, which literally means in Italian light dark. It's an artistic style of contrasting light and dark. So it's very there's a lot of artistic references and artistic theming going into this game. So the more important thing to talk about with Clair Obscur is that they titled the game that because it's seemingly going to be a bigger IP. And this is why I wanted to table the discussion from earlier. Delaila, you mentioned wanting, if they make any more games, you want them to be different, disconnected, not, not sequels or directly connected to one another in any way. Kind of like how, talking once again about this game's influences, Final Fantasy. Is that where you guys see a potential other Clair Obscur game going? Do you see it in being something more about the writers? Can it even focus on anything beside that isn't like, painterly, if it's using its title deriving from an artistic painting style? Like, where do you guys kind of see the future of this game going?
So just to answer that last question real quick, theoretically, Clair Obscur, just light dark, that could literally be a reference to storytelling as well. I know it's directly a reference to that painting style, but light and dark could just be the forces of light and darkness in a story. Like, yeah,
yeah, and I don't disagree with that, but I that's why I wanted to set this up with the origins of that name, because it is so intrinsic. It is like so thematically apt to name it that when we're talking about art and painting.
But in terms of potentially creating a franchise of it, which I would assume for marketing reasons they would kind of not have to, but be very much inclined to, because Clair Obscur would have that kind of a known appeal, a known quantity now. The only way I would personally want them to, or really accept them to do a sequel, is if it was another set of painters in another painted world, or another set of artists, or maybe multiple artists at cross purposes, their art intertwining, just a different story, different worlds, maybe similar gameplay ideas, evolved, iterated, but all different characters, none of the same from this one. Just different world, different characters.
I wouldn't mind it becoming like a Final Fantasy type thing where they're all not very much so connected. Maybe you'll see some like characters that do show up across either different versions.
They're just connected by that overworld where everybody at the tip top is an artist, but they're all dealing with their own problems within their own art.
Yeah, sure. Or yeah, but I really would be fine if this was just the only game.
So would I. I would actually probably just rather them just go and come up with something completely new. Yeah.
Yeah. But I definitely don't want. While I am interested to know more about the world because it's just that kind of game that provides so much intrigue and conversation. I learned that once you try to fill in the gaps, is Star Wars, it tends to lose its allure and mystery. So no,
Right.
no sequels, no DLC. Let's just leave it like this. Perfect.
Yeah, I think um I kind of believe that they kind of painted themselves into a corner. No, again, no pun intended, or maybe pun intended. By basing the IP name as Clair Obscur, again, direct reference or direct naming to this artistic style. And introducing, like, there's this other mysterious faction, the writers, that are at odds with the painters, and they could completely have another story focused on a completely different set of characters. But like, two issues with going forward with what we know and maybe don't know is, like, do you do a game focused on the writers or a group of the writers, and how does that kind of fit in with this chiaroscuro or Clair Obscur idea, when it's not painting that you're really focusing on? Or alternatively, um how do you do another game within this quote unquote IP that has as big revelations as Expedition 33 did, where the whole setup of the game, you find out, is this artificial world within a canvas? How do you kind of lay the foundation in a future game to have twists and turns that are as monumental as this game had?
Yeah.
Now that the jig is kind of up,
I
right?
mean, you could, if you really wanted to, by playing on the audience expectation that, all right, everybody is already a part of, like, knowing what they know and then playing with that. But then again, that's only a bag you can play with once as well. Honestly, like Delilah said, the best is just that they move on and do something else. And if they continue doing this as an IP, then hopefully they do not answer any of the questions that are raised here, like, what is the conflict between painters and writers? Just leave that. Don't touch that.
Yeah.
If you are going to do a sequel, if you're going to do a sequel, it should just use the concept, um, and
Well,
that's it. All new characters, all new
I
conflicts.
so I'll only partially agree with that personally. Like, I think it could be I think it could be compelling to explore these different factions, these different organizations or societies of these talented people, and digging into why that conflict exists. I think it would be I think it
It
should
would
be,
retroactively ruin the story because then you have to pose answers to questions raised here that are left
well,
unanswered.
not necessary. I think
This is
where I
why
think
when,
it
when writers talk about world building, it's an iceberg. You want to leave the whole bottom of the iceberg unexplored.
What I'm trying to say, Jason, is what I agree that it could retroactively ruin the story if they answer the question of, are the writers responsible for the fire? I'm saying, just have something focused on the writers, maybe give a little background as to why there's a conflict in the first place, but not directly that incident. Have it disconnected enough where it could be its own
Oh
standalone
yeah, yeah.
thing,
That's the
and
same
a
thing. That's the
world
same thing
build
I'm saying.
on.
Yeah, we're
Or,
saying we were saying the same thing. Yeah, we just
It'll just be
misunderstood you. Yeah,
Alan Wake.
yeah. Basically, the point is just do not touch anything that could potentially flesh out anything related to this story.
Right, and that's
Yeah,
what I'm trying to get at, as what I think would be the best outcome, because I think having something that digs into the writers, so to speak, would be interesting. But I don't necessarily want the answer of, were they responsible for the fire,
yeah,
or what was their relationship with Mael. I think there are definitely some questions better left unanswered, and that is definitely one of them.
yeah. And there is a council
Um,
of painters that they talked about, so there are other painters that they could delve into in that. Yeah,
Right, right. It's like it's I think there's a whole world here. It's much bigger than the Desandra family, and I think that is where they should go, is outside of that family, away from that family, and world build with this with this real world in universe that they've kind of established, um and go
Real
from there.
The real message is that money won't bring you happiness because them mofos had money. That manor was huge. And they were
True.
miserable fucks, not even trying to enjoy the manor. At least
true.
everyone but Clea.
That is 100% accurate.
But was she happy, or is she just a sad person pretending to not be sad?
Oh
I
no,
don't
she
know what
definitely was not happy,
No, she's
but
yeah, she's definitely sad with a facade of anger. But yeah, that's how she deals with the grief.
yeah.
Anyway. Any final comments or notes before we wrap this bad boy up?
I used to be all wee, and now I'm all woo.
Lost your stones again, Mark?
Jason, what's the Kwasnicki rating on this?
The Kwasnicki rating is, and I thought a lot about this,
I'm sure you.
and I'm just
sure
going to pull the
did.
trigger.
Oh boy.
9.8 stones out of 10.
Wow.
Wow.
Oh, 9.8.
Because for like pretty much any criticism change I would have is basically quality of life. There's very little that's not quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the highest score you've ever
Yes,
given a game?
I'm pretty sure it is.
Wow.
Other than like Snake Eater or RE4 that I probably gave like a 9.9 or
I think
10
you
out
gave
of 10
like
or
a
as close
well,
as
I think you gave like a 9.5 to something, but I don't remember. I
it
should
might have
really
been
keep a
it might have
spreadsheet
been,
of your
yeah.
scores.
Doesn't really matter. The point I knew it was going to be very high with like a Snake Eater or RE4 because for me this is my game not only of the year, game of the generation, game of the
Yeah,
decade maybe.
Well,
This
honestly,
is going to be one of my top games of all time on that list.
wow. Honestly, I feel like there's not much competition this generation. So I just feel like
Dang.
this
I just
is
feel
like a
like
bigger.
this game has out of nowhere, completely unexpectedly, from what I can see, overshadowed what our next game is going to be.
Well,
Oh,
Transition.
segue.
I think for you and your very specific tastes, that was.
Oh, I'm just saying. I haven't seen. I'm still seeing like coverage and talking about this, like in terms of breakdowns and stuff. Whereas not seeing a lot of talk about the game we're going to talk about next.
I don't agree with
I also
that,
hated
but
the first game. A lot of people.
yeah, I feel like you. Well, yeah, and I
That's
feel like
part of the reason why. Yeah.
I also feel like you're very specifically biased, but I do just want to close out. Like I played a little bit of devil's advocate for this game, and I definitely wasn't as high on it as like a lot of the community's been. I liked this game a lot. I in fact like really liked this game. There's a lot of things I liked about it. I feel like the tempers and I feel like this happens with a lot of video game hype cycles where a new game comes out, reviews really well, a lot of people pick it up and they're like, this is the greatest game I've ever played. And I think the feelings on that are very raw and they need time to digest. And who knows, maybe in 6 months or so, I'll think back on this game and be like, yeah, you know what? This really was like one of the all-time greats or something. But I think
Almost as if you iterate on your opinion, like you iterate on your emotion. Each time it comes back, but not the same.
Same, but different.
Okay. I just think that I like this game a lot. I feel like there's things to talk about, and I'm not sure that a lot of people that were super high on this game were like necessarily open to any criticism for a while. And I mean, I hope it's been a while since the game came out at this point that we're recording. I hope that enough the dust is settled and enough people are willing to listen to something where someone maybe openly criticizes certain aspects about this game.
I will say to what you're saying is my opinion only got better. I thought it would get like I started at a rating of somewhere around like 9.2, 9.3, and I thought I was gonna go down, but I ended up going up because the more I thought about it, the more I realized it was all QOL.
That's fine. I mean, that's great. That's kind of what you want. But my point being is like I feel like there's been a lot of reactionary feelings about this game. And usually those trend in a downward direction. This was very much an upward direction, but I also think that there's been a lot of hyperbolic language, a lot of hyperbolic just things being thrown out about this game, and it's almost turning the game into something it's not, and that's a
Yeah, like
problem.
the herald of some second coming of JRPGs from France.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And honestly, like it's putting a lot of pressure on a team that really just had a passion project. They had a good vision, and what they put together here is really commendable, and it's amazing. For the team that built this game, it's really astonishing what they were able to make, and I think that that's what the conversation should be, right?
Right.
Not that they are the second coming of JRP Jesus, but that they are a small team in 2025 where there is so much talk about live service games failing and AAA being way over budget and studios closing. And here comes this small team with
Also
this
$80 games.
an $80 game. Yeah, an
Yeah.
$80 games. And for this small team to come through and build something like this over the course of 6 years, and release it at the price point they did, and it's an Unreal Engine 5 JRPG, which we don't see a lot of or really any of,
Mhm.
and just take the game for what it is, and I do think it's incredible. Just don't try to make it into something more than that, and that's
It's already the best JRPG in years without hyping it up all like that. Yeah, it just is just on a gameplay level. Don't even have to
that
dig
is
into it too deep.
remember that is subjective, but
Okay,
it is
but yes,
it is a very good game.
it's an extremely impressive endeavor from the team. As you know, go watch and read about the team. It's worth it. They earned it. And look at some of the pictures. Some of the early builds of this game look like Beyond Good and Evil from back in the day, and now it
Yeah.
looks the way it looks.
Yeah, and I'll put some resources in the description. There's also another thing I wanted to put in the we didn't even talk about it, but like an interview Siliconera conducted with Yoshinori Kitase at Square Enix about an early concept for Final Fantasy X called 17, which again another thing that just seems like it completely was influenced for or used as an influence for this game's premise. So I'll put that in the description for anyone that wants to read more. But yeah, there's a lot of really fascinating things surrounding this game. I definitely think it's a great game. I don't want anyone to think that I didn't like it just because I was playing devil's advocate a little bit here. I was
Be
doing the Jason
nominated.
role for this episode.
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
And now watch people are going to get angry at me for being high on it.
No. No.
All right. We really got to wrap up. I'm sorry for going so far over.
It's okay.
Delaila, what are we talking about next episode?
Death Stranding 2 on the beach.
On
Another
the beach.
5-hour-long podcast incoming. I think that was our longest episode, right?
No, our longest episode was Elden Ring.
Oh.
And I think the second longest was Nier Replicant.
Ah.
Yeah, we went a while with Nier, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's one of my all-time favorites, so go check that one out. But yeah, if you liked this episode, thank you. If you watched or listened on YouTube, thank you so much. Leave us a comment, tell us what you liked, tell us what you didn't like the episode if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel to get more episodes. Also, be sure to share the episode with someone else that you know played this game and maybe would want to hear three doofuses talk about it and argue over Pictos and shit. If you listened on Apple Podcasts, thank you so much. Please rate and review the show 5 stars preferred. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you didn't like. Don't complain about Jason. We're not getting rid of him. We love him. So
You can complain about me though. Feel free to vent if it makes you feel better.
Well,
I can take it.
I mean, I guess so. But still leave a 5-star. Leave 5 stars in that review, okay? Don't give us 1 star and be like, I don't like Jason. Like, give us 5 stars and say you don't like Jason, and then I'll
That's the price of admission for getting a punch at me. It's like giving the ticket to hit the hammer with the clown, go in the pool, yeah.
So yeah, make sure you share the show with your family, your friends, your pets. Maybe not your kids; they're probably too young to be. Well, maybe depending on their age. This is rated M for mature, so just be wary about sharing with your children about this show and these games. And
I never even noticed that. Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much
I
fucking
mean,
blood.
it
Are you
makes sense.
kidding me?
Yeah, no, it makes sense that it is. I never thought of. Yeah,
Yeah.
I never even thought to look. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, well, I hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll see you next time for Death Stranding 2 on the beach. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.
Adieu.